Commissioners, we're live.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, December 11th, 2024. We are here for the Franklin County Commissioners meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask that you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adoption of current agenda. Any additions or corrections?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It's been asked that we amend the agenda to add an item number 9 to the regular business. The agenda item would be discussion on the prosecuting attorney's office staffing.
All right. So I have a motion. Do I have a second? Or
I think we have one more item to add, and that is a workshop session for you to discuss boards and committee appointments for 2025, just for discussion purposes, so that we can be ready in January with any changes to those. So we've got some materials for you for that.
all right. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I knew that and should have done it. So, Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend the agenda to add an item number 9 for discussion on PA staffing, as well as add a workshop item for discussion of the boards and committees that the 3 commissioners will be assigned to.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Approval of minutes, 12/4/2024.
I have no additions or corrections.
No additions.
Okay. Approval of warrant registers and payroll roster.
Mr. Chairman, we have 3 this morning. First, I move to approve salary clearing payroll emergency management payroll in the amount of $1,226,595.67, been signed by 2 members of the Auditor's Office and the County Administrator.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Second is fund expenditure, a special run for insurance in the amount, I move to approve fund expenditures, special run for insurance in the amount of $274,946.63, again signed by 2 members of the Auditor's Office and the County Administrator.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
The third is I move to approve fund expenditures in the amount of $368,512.29, again signed by 2 members of the Auditor's Office and the County Administrator.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to public comment. Is there anyone in the room for public comment? If so, state your name, and we have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Morning, Michelle Andrews, Pasco, Washington. And I have not been able to attend some meetings due to family business, and I realize the budget has been passed. But I would ask you to review the Superior Court budget. As a taxpayer, I have problem understanding, I may make a private meeting with Mr. Johnson, moving from 5.3 million to 13.1. I do see the other mandates and stuff coming down from the laws that the legislature has passed. I may not agree with them, but I understand the stress on the prosecuting and defense attorneys' budgets. But this is something I'm not really clear why there's such an increase and why it was approved. So I would ask you to go through that again with a fine-tooth comb and solicit Superior Court to see if they can manage their funds better or cut costs. Secondly, I would like to reiterate, and I have asked several times as a taxpayer, for a review on the HAPO Center. It is part of the contract, a public review, an annual review. So I'd like to see that on the agenda next week. I've asked several times. You've gotten through your budget. this is an agreement that they have with not just you, but the taxpayers as well. So I thank you for hearing me and for the time. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Hearing, seeing none. Do we have the phone system working now? Yeah. Approval of consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of consent agenda items 1 through 14 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to regular business. Oath of office, 2025 to 2028 term. For myself, presented by Trinity Orozco. Good morning.
I believe you got to go down front, sir.
Pardon me?
I said, I believe you need to go down front and talk to the judge.
Official.
Well, as I said last time, the county paid for it. Raise your right hand. Please state, I, Rocky Mullen,
I, Rocky Mullen,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the state of Washington
that I will support the Constitution of the state of Washington
and the United
and the
States,
United States.
and I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge
I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office of
the duties of the office
Franklin County Commissioner, District 2,
of Franklin County Commissioner, District 2,
according to the law,
according to the law,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
I need a pen.
Thank you. It's my honor and privilege to serve. Number 2, Washington State Department of Agricultural Japanese beetle update presented by Camilo Acosta. Good morning.
Morning. Will this projector turn on at some point? Okay, thank you. Nice. All right. Thank you for having me. I think it's been several times now you guys have had me, and I appreciate every single one. For those of you that haven't heard an update before, my name is Camilo Acosta. I'm the Japanese Beetle Eradication Coordinator with the Washington State Department of Agriculture Pest Program, Plant Protection Division. And I just want to do a quick recap of our trapping efforts and survey efforts in Franklin County. So on this map, we have a grid system that we use to trap. And the density of the traps depends on where we've caught beetles in past years, and then we adapt them as we go in the season where we catch more beetles. So you'll see there's a lot of the denser sections are orange, which are 49 traps per square mile. We go out to 25 traps per square mile in the blue grids, and then 5 traps per square mile in the pink grids. And every black dot you see on the map is a trap location. We had just over 1,000 traps in this grid. Now you will notice that it does include Benton County as well. The majority of them were in Franklin County, as there is that really dense trapping area where we were catching beetles last year. Now, we had an alarming increase in Japanese beetle detections this year. Starting in late June, we started catching them in the areas we expected, where we had already been catching them in last year, and where we did our treatments this year. What was concerning is we started having detections outside that area. As you can see, where we're standing actually became, if you want to call it a hotspot, that's what it became as the season went on. And as we got into peak flight season, which is around mid-July, late July, those beetle numbers kept increasing. We have all the traps down by now. We end the trapping season at the end of October. So this season in Franklin County, we caught 408 beetles, up from just 5 last year. And we caught 1 across the river as well in Kennewick. You can see that on this map. That's just, it's right across the river. Oh, you can't see my cursor, but you can see on the bottom left, right across the river there. So trapping efforts there didn't lead to any more detections. Hopefully that was just a particularly strong flyer that came over from Pasco. But as you can see here, like, all these orange diamonds are our detection sites for Pasco. Our problem area, which is on the left there, which is kind of West Sylvester Street up north to Wernette, that kind of 1.5 mile square there where we did our treatments this year, that continues to be a problem. And we have a new population. Well, this can all be considered really the same population, but another concentration where we are right now. We did do some foliar treatments to Volunteer Park and other municipal properties during late summer to try and kill some adults before the season was out. Now, the increase in population is expected because we found 5 last year. It's highly unlikely we would have trapped every beetle that was out there existing. So, but an increase like this is quite alarming. So moving forward with our plans, as some of you know, we are also eradicating in Wapato and in our main eradication grid in Grandview. But moving forward into 2025, Pasco is going to be a real focus for us, as the population is still very concentrated in one area, and we think that I at least am really optimistic because Pasco itself had the highest percentage of people signing up for these treatments in 2024. And I think moving forward, because the population is kind of more dense here, I think that'll be an advantage for us to get these treatment consents in 2025. Now, what all these detections mean for our treatment program is we are going to be expanding that treatment grid. So up from just the 1 square mile that we treated this year, next year we're proposing to treat this area of 8 square miles. And this encompasses all the detections that we had, or most of them that meet that threshold that we use to expand our treatment areas. And so in this shaded area, this red shaded area, that's our treatment area for 2025. And now this is going to involve the same turf grass treatments that we did in 2024 with the same chemical, acelepryn. We will be hiring a contractor to do this again in 2025. And these treatments, as always, are dependent on the environmental review process in the area and available legislative funding. Thank you. One thing I want to mention, though, is I had come to you all before mentioning a possible internal quarantine like there is in Grandview. At this time, we're still discussing it internally, so I don't have any news on that front, unfortunately. What I can tell you is, it being such a small area, it's going to present some of the same challenges that we talked about last year with finding ways to mitigate the restrictions placed on small businesses and residents before we enact a quarantine. Mitigations being things like places to take your green waste. If we're going to put a restriction on its movement, we need to find a place or a solution for those types of issues before we go forward with that. So, thank you.
So when you say we had the highest percentage, what area are you referring to?
Yeah, my bad. I shouldn't have clicked out of that so fast. So our 1 square mile treatment area last year was kind of this. Whoops. So if I draw, It was this right here. Just let me draw. No? Well, what I was talking about there, that square between ending at Road 48 all the way to the freeway, and then north and south we're bound by, thank you so much, bound by Sylvester Street and Wernette. So that square mile, yeah, where we have probably about a little more than half the detections in our survey. Yep, that's exactly the square mile I'm talking about right there. So in that area, we had about 60% agree to treatment, which still isn't as high as we would want, but it was higher than anywhere else, in any other city that we treated in 2024. So I think people are, seeing the news, seeing how things are going in Grandview. And I think people here, just like in Grandview, have really nice manicured lawns, and they really care about the aesthetic of their properties. And also, if you're a backyard gardener, I mean, you also understand that this beetle is going to be devastating to anything you try and do in your yard. And I think the message is getting out to people in Pasco, which is great. And I hope that continues to be the case in 2025, having the support of the residents in this area.
So do you coordinate with the lawn care service professionals in the area so that they can pass the word out as well?
Yeah, that's part of the whole, that's included actually in what we do when we're trying to do investigation before we enact a quarantine, is we do what's called a small business economic impact statement. And we reach out to businesses in the area. We haven't got there yet, but I already have been doing some investigations on the side. And, it's always encouraged when something's happening like this, even though there is not a quarantine right now, still encouraging residents to not transport possible articles that could introduce Japanese beetle to other areas. It's something that our communications team tries really hard to do, getting that message out. But, until an official quarantine gets put in place, it's a little more difficult to get that information out there and have it be kind of widely known and, respected in some kind of way. So.
All right. So outside of that 1 square mile, is it just because you haven't detected the beetle in other areas outside of that?
Well, we have, just like where we are, is this a pointer? It is, great. It was right in front of me. So we're right here. Mm-hmm. And, where we treated was over here. So yes, we are getting that detection outside that square mile. That's why this area is about 8 square miles that we're going to encompass in our treatment area. So we are definitely seeing that beetle spread, and it's consistent with what we're seeing in Grandview, what we have been seeing in Grandview for 3 years now, which is the beetle can move on its own, of course. It can fly, and it moves at about a rate of half a mile to a mile per year on its own. Now, when we talk about it expanding from Grandview to Pasco or from Grandview to Wapato, that's not under the beetle's own power. That is with help from someone inadvertently transporting it. But the beetles, they do spread on their own. It's just a lot slower of a process, which is why I'm optimistic that we can still get rid of Japanese beetle here. The population is relatively small, considering in the East Coast and Midwest, they catch tens of millions in areas like this.
So they're traveling in yard debris.
Yeah, that's one of the ways they can travel. One of the regulated articles that we include in other quarantines, yeah.
And how else are they traveling?
Well, honestly, the amount of traffic that comes through here, and there being all these, crisscrossing freeways and the bridge going into Benton County, really any vehicle could be a means of conveyance for Japanese beetle. So they just tend to like jumping onto somewhere where there's food.
Okay.
But technically, if you're in one of these areas, and if your house has a rose garden and you have lots of Japanese beetles, it's always possible for them for just one hitchhiker, to be on your car for some reason. That's just how it happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can Can you remind us of the reproductive cycle and how many a female can throw off in a year?
Yeah, absolutely. So Japanese beetles, they have one generation per year. At this time, the larvae that hatched in late September or early September, they are going to survive the winter by digging deep underground. And they're already at their largest larval stage. So when spring comes and the soil starts to warm up, they will just pupate. And then they will come out as an adult. In our area, that tends to be around late June or mid-June. And a single female Japanese beetle, they live about 4 to 6 weeks, and they can lay anywhere from 40 to 60 eggs in their lifetime, sometimes up to 100, depending on available resources.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Are you seeing success with the efforts in Grandview and the areas that have a higher concentration? Are you seeing success with your treatment program?
What I can tell you is, and this is something that we try and really communicate to the public, because our method of treatment that we use, acelepryn works to kill the next generation of beetles. So that's why we still see adult beetles every single year. And when we get our results, our trapping results, they are directly reflective of how well we did the previous year. So in 2023 in Grandview, the Grandview area, for example, that was our second year of treatment. And I think that wasn't as successful as our first year or this year, which was our most successful year, because a lot of people that had got treated in 2022 did not get treated in 2023 because maybe we didn't do a good enough job of communicating that this needs to be done every single year for a long, this is a long-term eradication. We're talking 5 to 10 years in Grandview. We're heading into our 4th year here. And we, frankly, we're not going to eradicate this insect by getting 55% of people treated, because you get treated, but your neighbor doesn't. Your neighbor's beetles just come reinfest your property. So we did see a decline in the population in 2023. But this year, those results we actually had an increase in Japanese beetles in the Grandview area this year. And that's really concerning and not something we want to be seeing, but I believe it really does reflect how we did in 2023 with our eradication. So I'm hoping in 2025 we'll see that decrease again, because this year we did have a pretty good year with getting those consents, and we got a lot of properties treated. Yeah.
Are you already underway with getting consent in preparation for treatment, or does that not start for a while?
Actually, yes. Because the treatment areas didn't change a whole lot this year, and there wasn't a whole lot of coordination that we'd had to do with the counties to get their parcel information again, we had pretty much the exact same address list. So what we're going to do is we're sending out those mailers in January, but you can already go online or in person to pick up a physical form and give your consent already. We do already have those consents coming in every day at this point, and the mailers haven't even hit mailboxes yet, and that's when we usually see that huge spike in people giving their permission. So,
okay, will you pull up that 8 square mile map?
mm-hmm.
So you might have to help me, but it appears to me that this is about Road 64.
Yep.
Argent, across airport, down basically where the railroad comes through, all the way to the cable bridge.
Yep.
And the river.
Yep.
So the intention, I'm guessing, is to do as much treatment inside of that area as you can.
Yeah, I left the layer out because it gets really messy when trying to present it. But yeah, every single tiny county parcel in here, I could turn this layer on and it would just be all yellow with these tiny county parcels for all these residences and other properties. And yeah, the goal is to treat every single one of those that has treatable area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. Of course. Have a good day. Veteran Service Officer update on services provided. Presented by Kyle Sullivan, Director John Penny.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I have with me our Benton and Franklin County Veteran Service Officer, John Penny. Just to provide a little bit of a review of kind of how we got to this. Back in 22, we held a bi-county meeting, and we had a presentation from Steve Gill with the WDVA, and he came and talked about not only the benefits of a veteran service officer, but a county-funded veteran service officer, and how it opens additional doors through WDVA when they're tied to the counties. And so both boards unanimously approved and directed me to develop a position, recruit and hire, and of course, both Benton and Franklin County's Veterans Assistance Fund committee that advises the commissioners were in complete support of that. And so we recruited, hired John's predecessor, and he was in the job for about a year, moved on to do some additional things, which is why this update is a little bit delayed. My hope was to have come before you sooner, but we were in the process of transitioning to we had the previous VSO had resigned, and John was hired on in May or June?
May 1st.
May.
Yeah.
And so then the intent was to allow him some time to get up to speed, and he got up to speed very quickly. And so he had done some of this work just in an informal capacity prior to the county hiring him. And so I'll tell you, one of the things that had been talked about by both veteran advisory committees was their belief that there was, with the veteran population that we have in both Benton and Franklin counties, is a fairly large veteran population, that one veteran service officer was not going to be enough. My intent was to develop a program, start with one VSO, come and report the successes, and then, if need be, look at adding a second VSO as the need presented. And so, as the board knows, we just reconstituted our Veterans Advisory Board, I think a few weeks ago. We did the same thing in Benton County, and so my intent will be, and we have some of the members from our previous advisory board are continuing over into the current 2-year term. And so that will be one of the topics of discussion moving forward. We'll probably have our kind of kickoff meetings in sometime in mid-January, and we'll have that discussion. So what I would, and I'll shooting straight with you, my anticipation is that they'll both want to recommend a second veteran service officer, but we'll come and have a conversation with you before. And kind of outline what that would look like, and before we do anything with regard to that. But John has some statistics and kind of an explanation of some of the services that he provides. He's able to pull numbers through the connection we have with WDVA. They track a bunch of different stuff, and so I'm going to turn it over to John at this time, and he'll talk about some of the work he's doing, and then certainly entertain any questions that the board would have following his presentation.
Again, my name is John Penny. Good morning. Thank you for hearing some of the information I have to share. So as Kyle said, when the program was stood up in 2022, some of these numbers are derived from the inception of the program to give a holistic look of what's been accomplished, and then in the last 6 months of me being in that position, what it looks like and what my agenda is going to look like in this next calendar year. Since inception of the program, we have, between myself and my predecessor, we filed 1,256 claims. This is by far, especially for our area, we are disproportionately, we're doing more claims than, say, our colleagues on the other side of the mountains. Whether that's a proficiency, efficiency, whatever it is, we're doing the work. To go into what a claim is and what it constitutes a claim, not every claim is going to be the same. Some are for service-connected disabilities, some are for not service-connected disabilities, healthcare, home loans. I have outlined for you in this binder that I would encourage you to look at the different types of benefits that can be filed. Per the WDVA, the way that they calculate the value of a claim is approximately $1,700 month over month. And that is, again, not just direct cash benefits for disability, but it also, when you are enrolled in the healthcare portion of the VA, that of course employs doctors, nurses, support staff at our local Richland community-based outpatient clinic, but also affords the opportunity for veterans to receive care through the community care program, which because of our area, we have a large population, but we don't have a large VA medical center. The CBOC is essentially 25, 30 healthcare professionals, so a lot of care is pushed out to the community, everything from podiatry to neurology, and those are direct federal dollars paying for that. So again, that $1,256, if you extrapolate that out, again, $1,700 per claim, it adds up very quickly. In the last 5 months of me having my accreditation, but 6 months in this role, I filed 336 of those claims, so approximately about 5 meetings per day, with a success bringing in approximately $666,000. Those metrics are great. I think they could be better. Some of the things that me and Kyle have been working on is not just sitting in one central location waiting for veterans to come to me. What I've been pushing is just kind of trying out different modalities of service, anything from going to the county, meeting people at the county building, going to the jail setting, going and doing claims at the Richland community-based outpatient clinic, just trying to, develop the program a little bit, get some more information about what's ease of access for veterans, where they have access to the needed documentation for me to complete that claim. Looking at this next year, I want to build on some of the success that we've had going out into the community and doing more interactions with places like nursing homes. There's a great benefit called aided attendance. That's a very little known. Everyone, again, puts a lot of thoughts and consideration for disability claims and healthcare claims. Service, especially with our older Vietnam-era veterans now aging into skilled nursing facilities and retirement homes, a lot of times Medicare won't cover the needed health care that they desperately need. If you were a Vietnam-era veteran, it was more likely than not you were exposed to Agent Orange, which causes Alzheimer's and dementia, along with a ton of internal medicine conditions such as renal failure, prostate conditions, eye conditions, diabetes. So again, the special care that they need often isn't completely covered, and again, that puts a really heavy strain on the family to come up with those funds. Aid in attendance, again, no one really knows about it. I go into nursing homes, and the staff have no idea. So I help them facilitate a medical review of that veteran, and that is approximately, given the financial circumstances, approximately $2,500 to $3,000 additional to cover that medical funding. Again, those are federal dollars going to that individual to pay for their care that they are entitled to. Another great program that I didn't even know about prior to me becoming the Veteran Service Officer, as Kyle stated, I've been working in Veteran Services approximately 7 years, and I had no idea this one existed. Really well-kept secret is the Family Caregiver Program. So again, if there is a veteran that is either housebound or in a nursing home, if it's cheaper for the family to bring them home, they can actually appoint a family member to be that caregiver. So where otherwise that would have been a free labor of love, this is now something that the family member would be compensated for approximately $40,000 a year to take care of that veteran. And along with that program comes health care benefits for the caretaker. Again, you get to be surrounded by a loved one in that process. There's tons of support groups for the caretaker. That is a great program that I'm heavily pushing in this next year. Burial benefits as well. The funeral homes right now are actually doing a heavy lift for that I wasn't aware of prior to this. They're filing a lot of those benefits because to them it is a business. But one thing that they are not filing is the actual reimbursement for those costs. Between the state and the VA, there's approximately $3,000 that can be obtained. Again, those are federal dollars coming in to pay for an incredibly expensive endeavor on the family. So again, the VSO position of providing healthcare or connecting people with healthcare rather is only a portion of it. And I really want to expand on these other areas going forward, especially with the National Cemetery possibly coming to the area. And again, I put all this in a binder for y'all, but any questions about that?
On the veterans care is like home and care. Is that only for the veteran or the veteran's spouse? Is that?
I apologize, Commissioner, I didn't hear the question.
So when you're talking about home care, if you can bring that person home, is that only to the veteran or does it apply to the veteran's spouse?
If there is a surviving spouse, say the veteran passes, they, through working with myself or a VSO, those benefits, those accrued benefits can be passed on to the spouse. It is still income based, so if there is a surviving spouse that is below that threshold, they would qualify for aid in attendance, which then would be the expectation would they would be using that funding to pay for in-home care.
All right, thank you. Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
1,256 claims at $1,700 each comes up to $2,135,000. I don't believe our fund has been tasked with paying out. I know this is Benton County and Franklin County combined, but have we had that much of a draw on our account?
Well, I think what, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're referring to, these are claims that you have made to the VA that he's providing assistance to veterans in our community, not utilizing our veterans funds, but rather helping them basically access services and funds that they are eligible for as a veteran through VA.
Through the federal government.
Yeah, through the federal government.
And state government? Is state putting money in this?
The state benefits are dwarfed by the federal benefits, and right now the tracking mechanism that we have only tracks federal government dollars that are brought into the community.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the Family Caregiver Program. The way you explain it, I understand it, is a family member can give care for the individual that was a veteran. They also get health care benefits.
That is correct. And by and large, again, this is kind of an anecdotal take on the circumstance that older veterans are facing right now, or just veterans that need that service, is that loved one, family member is already providing those healthcare services. They're just being uncompensated. So they're having to rely heavily on state benefits through DSHS to maintain just a standard of living, some of which, I mean, even coming in for eviction prevention dollars from the county, whereas now there is actually a working income-based family member that's being compensated for that time. Takes the stress off of the local system.
And I think if I can make a comment, one thing I want to make sure that you're clear of, we pay John's salary out of the combined Benton and Franklin Veterans Assistance Fund, but all of the services, all of the benefits, all of the dollars that are coming back to our community that are allocated to the veteran and their spouse, those are all federal dollars. So he's bringing federal dollars into our community that aren't tied to our Veterans Assistance Fund.
That explains it. And one last question, Mr. Penny, is How are we reaching out to homeless veterans that are in our community that are maybe living on the street? How are we reaching them right now? Are we making any attempt to bring them in and give them help?
I believe that we've taken a lot of needed steps in that direction. I come from that side of services as an addiction counselor, but also I ran multiple homeless outreach programs to connect people to services. Is something I'm very passionate about. Veterans specific, so I'm very in touch with the jail side of things. If there is someone that becomes incarcerated, I spend every other Friday. I was going down to Union Gospel Mission. For whatever reason, there wasn't a lot of veterans at that time, so now it's just on a needs basis. And I partake in the federal, through our local HUD-VASH team, I partake in the by name list, which is a name-by-name a list accounted for by the VA to veterans that need these types of services. And if there's ever a need, I'm just right
Fantastic.
front and center on a Wednesday.
So the Union Gospel Mission, I believe, has a policy if you're not clean, you don't get to go in there.
It is a high barrier shelter,
Yes. Okay.
unfortunately.
One other point to add, we do have, not tied to the veterans programs, we developed here a couple of years ago a position for an outreach coordinator. And so that person has set days. There's one day a week that they're part of a team. And there's one day of the week that they go around the city of Pasco and Franklin County. Another day of the week that they're tied to Kennewick. And we're in the works of trying to get something worked out with Richland. And in the event that team comes in contact with a veteran, she works really well with John, and she's also part of the HUD-VASH. Had HUD-VASH contacts to help them kind of navigate, not only, what get them housed, but also what other services we can get lined up for them.
So, Mr. Penny, what branch of Armed Force were you part of?
Was it the haircut that gave it away, Commissioner? I served in the Marine Corps from 2010 to 2015.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for what you're doing to the vets,
Thank you.
vets.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you.
I had a question.
Oh, I'm
if it's
sorry.
okay.
I thought you said you were done.
How, whenever you put in claims, how responsive is those claims handled?
So the kind of taken from the first step to the final step. I make contact with the veteran, makes contact with me. I schedule them, get them going on the initial intake, approximately an hour and a half. And in that time, what we're really focusing on is what do we have and what else do we need. If you file a claim that's has incomplete information, it will be rejected, it will be denied, and the appeal process is an additional 3 or 4 months. So from the time that I meet them, I schedule them approximately 3 or 4 more follow-ups. Again, just tracking that claim, making sure that it's completed. The wait time currently is about 6 months. So and that's assuming there's no appeal process needed. It is, I do my best to get it right the first time. Anything to get to the front of the line.
I appreciate that. That kind of breaks my heart that it takes 6 months to get help to somebody that needs help. And so if we can be of help in any way in any of those processes, I would love to be helpful. And also, thank you for your service. And I had the opportunity to meet John in one of his previous roles as an addiction counselor and working in I think that you were with Recovery Navigators?
The Recovery Navigator program.
Yeah, back when I met you. So I seen your heart and passion for that back then, and thank you for your service, and thank you both for what you do.
Thank you.
Just one quick question. You talked about the connection that you're making with the federal VA and some state VA dollars. Help me understand, though, the role that you play administering our local veterans assistance dollars. Is that a role you're playing as well? And one of the things we have been talking about is we have some excess dollars in there and wanting to have discussions around how do we either broaden the access to those dollars or up the limits, because we haven't been expending at the rate we've been collecting.
And I think with regard to upping the limits, I think that was one thing that I believe we may be lacking other counties, and I think that's something that is an agenda item for our first meeting with the advisory boards. I believe that they'll be in support of that, but it's important to get their input and their buy-in too before I bring something like that before you also. But I think that's something that we've been talking about for a bit, and I think that'll probably happen in 25. Typically, we've got John doesn't have a lot of involvement with the Veterans Assistance Fund. He can certainly has access to it if he comes across a veteran that's in need. We have one day of the week that in my office we have designated Wednesdays for, although I say it's designated Wednesdays, but veterans come every day and we help them. But we do other things in the office, and so if we have one staff that's dedicated and her day to assist veterans is a designated day is Wednesday. And so she's quite busy throughout the day, administering the assistance fund, as well as the vet center has access to administer the fund, over on 7th and Ainsworth. And they do it every day of the week.
Right. I do think it's the goal of the board to raise those limits, because we are, it doesn't, the cash sitting in the bank isn't helping, so.
Well, and everything costs more
Right.
now.
So if you could make that a priority in early 2025, I think the board would really appreciate that.
We will.
Great.
I would like to add one thing to that, noted though, to push that. I think another issue that was more unexpected is I am the only accredited veteran service officer in the region until you get to Walla Walla. Whereas it used to be the American Legion, Veteran Foreign Wars, Vietnam Veterans of America. They have, for whatever reason, have lost their accreditations on the state level. So maybe there's not as much information. There's not enough me's out there doing the work.
Yeah, great, thank you. And also, just a piece of that, in-home caregiving, which is just so vital to the overall, kind of spectrum of care. I don't know whether you coordinate also with the Area Agency on Aging in that facet as well, but it might be a good interconnection for when they identify someone who's seeking in-home care to the programs that you have available. So drawing that linkage over to the Area Agency on Aging. I'm not sure which one of you serve on the Area Agency on Aging, but maybe we can make that connection as well.
Well, Commissioner Mullen, do they still meet after the GCBH
Yes.
meeting?
They do.
Okay, great.
And you're referring to aging and long-term care?
Area Agency on Aging, which provides some of those services and funds locally.
Is that through DSHS, Commissioner?
The AAA is actually a local area.
Got it.
So, Mr. Sullivan, could the funds from our Veterans Fund be used to help those agencies get accreditation again?
I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that.
Look into
I
it.
think my experience in interactions that I've had with WDVA and is that I think their preference and they can do different models. But when we were talking about, the conversation came up when we were developing this position. Do we provide money to an agency to have the veteran service officer housed or be employed by that aid? We looked at different models, and WDVA was very on the record as saying their preferred model, what they find the best outcomes from are a veteran service officers tied to the counties. It opens additional, and I'm sorry, I don't know the reasoning why, but John has access to data and to services through WDVA that some of the other agencies, because they didn't have a government tie, didn't. And so that's part of why they've really pushed to have the veteran service officers be county employees. It opens additional doors.
Okay. Just trying to get more people out there that can find the people that need help. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate all the work that you do. We need to take care of our veterans, so if there's anything that we can do to help you, let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For this information here, right here.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep,
Thank you for providing that. That'll be helpful.
Moving on to item 4, presentation update HAPO Center payments presented by Auditor Matt Beaton.
Mr. Chair, would you be okay with like a 3-minute recess? I had some stuff laid on my desk for this topic and I left it there.
Sure, we will recess for 3 minutes.
3-minute
He-
recess.
3And welcome Matt Beaton, Auditor, and Tim Anderson for presentation of the HAPO Center payments.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate, this was a letter that I sent back on November 14th. And it's, I appreciate the opportunity to just go over it with you here at this public meeting because it will create a record. What I'd like to do is I'm just basically going to summarize the letter I sent to you, and then we can discuss, you know, the 4 recommendations at the end of it. So I'll skip through it, but I mean, I'll read portions of it. And that is that this is a brief history of the recent management services at the HAPO Center and an update on the unresolved challenges that presently exist. You know, I'll give a brief history and then some recommendations. So it was on October 20th when the Franklin County Commission decided to depart from a longstanding management and monitoring structure of the HAPO Center. To that date in history, the management and monitoring had been internal to Franklin County. County employees managed and operated it, and the county auditor and treasurer were involved in the financial operations and the auditing. That all changed with Resolution 2022-251. I provided all the backup data for all of this in the packet. There was a newly formed vendor, SVM, and a contract was laid with them. The contract ended the management and monitoring by the county auditor and the treasurer. The new company was an independent contractor and provided, per the contract, should provide all the reporting, accounting, and audits. And that was a contract that was approved by resolution as well as signed off by the prosecuting attorney office. The contract clearly established that the vendor, quote, owes a fiduciary obligation to the county and that Franklin County will allow the contractor, this is in quotes, will allow the contractor to operate the HAPO Center according to sound business practices and industry standards. The contract went on to block the county's ability to, quote, on what will be done and how it will be done, but could control the result of the work. So again, the new structure moved the operational oversight to the county commissioner's office, and more directly, the county commissioner's county administrator, and an additionally new created position in the commissioner's office. While the day-to-day involvement in the accounting and auditing ended for the Franklin County Auditor's Office, the statutory function of the Auditor's Office still requires the oversight and reporting of the use of public funds, and that's why I'm here today. So, you know, the new vendor started in 10 of 22, was extended 12 of 12/22. And then, of course, the county hired a new county administrator in March of 23. So it was shortly after that concerns arose about the HAPO Center that resulted in the county administrator and the commissioners requesting the county auditor's assistance. Auditor staff were asked to respond to concerns about the accounting being used and the confusion it created. The staff shared concerns about accounting practices with the county administrator and the absence of the standard reconciliations. The county then, to go on, you understand we went through an RFP process and we awarded, the county awarded to a new vendor. In order,
Mr. Beaton, it might help us to who the new vendor was.
Oh, we awarded to HWL.
There you go. Thank you.
And so, as part of that process, the decision was suggested by the auditor's office and staff and approved by the commissioners to get the assistance of a independent accounting firm to assist with the cutover. And so, as part of that process, we did request an audit. The accounting firm declined to produce that audit, although they were retained, and the invoices are in here. They were retained for to assist the vendor, the SVM, in preparing its books to a point that the new vendor would accept them to begin operation in October. So since that time, since the time of the handover, the new firm has been, has asked questions in their attempts to try to get the financials all in line with, with industry standards. And we know it's a firm that's got extensive experience in the public venue management. And so there was some unresolved questions regarding some of the futures account, the trust funds, and then some more questions that are unresolved regarding some reconciliations on some of the internal accounts, the catering account.
Maybe you could explain the futures account of what that actually means in terms of folks that were perhaps making a deposit for a future event.
Sure. And so what happened at the time of the handover is in any kind of a public assembly venue, they're always going 1, 2, 3 years out, and they collect contractually deposits from their customers. And that is an account that typically, it's a trust account. The way it stands right now, that trust account, it was short approximately 20,000. I think it was
Yes.
It was a $20,000 shortage in that trust account. Through explanations and discussions, there is an explanation by the vendor for that, and it had to do, and it came about in that collaborative work that we were doing. This letter was ultimately generated. There is a pending. We were all kind of waiting for the state auditor's office, referred to as the SAO. We were all waiting for them to come in and do the financial audit. And unfortunately, it appears at this time that based on the circumstances and the inability to answer or tell or discern what happened, that they are going to disclaim. And I'll have Tim explain what it is to disclaim.
So a disclaimer of an opinion is when an auditor will, it's a disclaimer of an opinion in an audit report when they are unable to obtain enough evidence to form an opinion that is comfortable for the users of the financial statements. It's a type of modified opinion. So typically you get an unmodified opinion, which is a good opinion. It's used as a last resort. It's means they are distancing themselves from providing any opinion at all related to the financial statements. So it's pretty rare. I worked at the state auditor's office for over 6 years. I don't recall any disclaimers of opinions when I worked there. There was one entity that may have had one that I knew about, but I can't remember if it wound up being a disclaimer of opinion or not. But it was an entity that was ultimately dissolved shortly down the road. But ultimately, in a disclaimer of opinion, they would normally state the reasons for the disclaimer of opinion in the audit report. They'd state that the scope of the audit was not sufficient to warrant an opinion, and then disclose any other reservations regarding the fair presentation. And so these are things that we still have we haven't received the finalized audit report from the auditors. It's at this point with the Christmas and New Year's season coming up, it's likely going to be into maybe even mid-January before we get that final report. But I just wanted to emphasize something that Matt was talking about as far as this setup that we had for for how we were operating the HAPO Center was a very unusual contract. I mean, and it was something that was put together with very short notice, I believe, when our management team left the county, when our employees left the county. But it's a very unusual government to have an outside party manage all of our money externally and then submit that money to us every month. The typical scenario that you would see that you have in like the Kennewick Public Facilities District, as well as other entities throughout the state, would be you're managing much more as if you're the general manager that we always had historically, where all the money stays within the county. It's public funds. It should stay within the county, and that's how we're now doing the new contract as well. As they're using our financial system, whereas before our financial system wasn't used for invoices and stuff like that. And so we were seeing the residual of stuff, whereas now all the invoices are entered in our system, and so there's a lot more access to that. We have we didn't have the same access to information at the push of a button that we do now and that we had previously when we had employees at the county. And so just, this all leads to, what Matt had talked about as well, with the, and ultimately the disclaimer of opinion. So 2024, what that looks like, as far as we understand, is that essentially it'll be the state auditor's office will come in and they'll almost be starting from scratch as if it's a new entity. And so I think that will mean that they'll be auditing more balances. I could see it being somewhat of a more expensive audit for the HAPO Center in 2024, just because it's almost as if it's a brand new audit since they're not giving an opinion for 2023. Now they're going to come in and look at each balance, and they'd likely be auditing more balances and to make sure that they're satisfied in 2024.
I do want to reiterate something he said that I think is really important for the public and for you as a board to understand. So the unusual nature of that, of that last minute contract that was put together in 2022, on January 1st of this year, and to, the new vendor that the board selected, to their credit as well as to the, auditing staff, they worked together to immediately reestablish the oversight and accountability that had been in place for the history of the venue. And that was one thing. I came before this board in executive session and tried to explain, and I want everyone to hear this very clearly. They weren't, as of January 1, Franklin County was paying their bills again. There was no bills being paid out there. There was quite a bit of, quite a big deal made in this county over the last year, and some people made some decisions based on a complete lack of understanding of how that entity was operating. Franklin County cuts the checks to pay the bills. There is no bills being paid as there was under SVM as of January 1st. And that was to reestablish the controls for the accountability of the money. So that's a very important thing that's kind of an aside to what we're trying to accomplish here, which is to explain that this disclaim is coming. There is still some need to resolve some of this. And there is all that's really left is administration, I believe, because there was a lot of misunderstanding around all of it. And what really remains is for the public to understand what the structure was, how the commissioners were reacting as they put the RFP in place and tried to move back after getting out of COVID and all the, everything that was going on during those times. And so what we have left is that it sounds like they're going to disclaim. It'll start from a new beginning. They'll look at the entity much closer, but we still have to resolve and answer, the questions that are existing. And per the contract, I can get to the 4 recommendations that I sent in the letter from November 14th. Number 1 was, certified accounting assistance. We should request of the vendor to engage a certified accountant, and this firm will engage in the necessary supporting data and provide the reports on the operation of the HAPO Center to us.
Which vendor are you referring to?
The SVM.
Thank you.
I'm talking, these recommendations all are in the interim or the SVM, these recommendations.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this was already attempted with an outside firm, and they couldn't make
at the request of this board, at our request and approval of this board, we had brought in for the cutover.
Right.
And we didn't even, when we brought them in, the award had been made to HWL, and we did request of them at the time that they do an audit, and they declined to do it based on, what they saw. And so they said, I remember the conversation. I said, how much for an audit? And he said, you don't have enough money. And so I said, well, yes, we do. We're the government. Can you give me an estimate? And they just said, look, we declined based on the circumstances. We think we can help. You know, I mean, they had a lot of experience with businesses, and they did help. I mean, they assisted both SVM and the county. There was a lot of iterations, a lot of work was done. And there's just a little more work to be done, quite frankly. They have given us an explanation. It's a plausible explanation. It's a believable explanation. We just have to do the work to show it. And that's per the contract that falls to the vendor, SVM.
What was their finding?
They didn't give us a finding. What they did was the county spent, I included somewhere in the area of $10,000 we spent to assist SVM in reorganizing and bringing their financials up to a point that the new vendor, HWL, said, okay, we'll start with this. And then HWL did a fantastic job of going back through every contract and trying to match up funds for the futures account, which is a trust. Like I said, it's a trust account. Unfortunately, in the operation, the explanation was some of those trust funds were being used for monthly shortages at the facility, which is because our understanding there was no monthly reconciliations being made. In the SVM contract, the unusual nature where it was all off-site. The gist of it was this: if they made money, money came into the county. If they needed money, money flowed back into SVM. Well, there was, I think, per that plan, there should have been monthly reconciliations, and then that money would have moved back and forth. And in fact, it doesn't appear that's how it worked. So, but the explanation is, I mean, the answer is request the entity to have, to provide the audited financials and explanations on where the money went. And then it's accounting. So the numbers in the end should reconcile and balance. And so that's where we're at, is that this has basically, have them per the contract, get certified accounting assistance, provide audited financials, a discrepancy report to tell us why in what is a trust account. The county is going to have to make that $20,000 up. Well, it already has to, but we have a fiduciary responsibility, I believe, to explain to the public what happened to that money. Lastly,
so the purpose of the trust account is to hold that money for future events as a deposit.
Correct.
So why would you give me a situation where you would take money out of that trust fund?
I can't answer. I mean, if you're asking me personally, I don't know.
I'm
Their
just
explanation is, that's your request of them, is for them to explain it. I can't, they've got an explanation.
I'm just asking for a hypothetical reason why you would ever take money out of a trust-held account.
I mean, I think the normal course would be you would take it out once the event is held to go towards applying it towards the cost of the event.
Yeah, I understand that. That's my understanding.
That would be
yes.
the one side of it, and then the other side I think would also be as if they canceled the event, if they end up not having it, that's the deposit that I think generally you lose.
That's the only two reasons I
becomes,
can see for
yes.
pulling money out of a trust account for future events. I'm just asking if there is any other hypothetical situation where it would be okay to take that money out of the trust account.
To my knowledge, those are the two.
When you mean okay, legitimate?
Exactly,
Or
legitimate.
Okay.
I'm sorry, legitimate reasons, because I can only see that money being held in trust for a future event in case there is a cancellation. Otherwise, it would go towards the rental of that event for that particular event.
That's the way it's designed. So what we know is at this moment in time, that's not the way it happened, and that we know that they have an explanation, and that and that we are in that particular area. And there was some other questions in some other accounts, that have come about that I believe we should seek answers, from them like I said, per the contract, I mean, if you, and I've provided the contract to you, it was very clear in the contract that they would provide accounting, reporting, and audits. And so, especially when the vendor accepts all of that responsibility in their contract, I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation for the county to request a full audit that you present to us, right? I mean, get the accounts in line and provide audited financials. And we, in number 2, and I've given you this information so that you know that this request can be made of the vendor. There should be a statement of net position, statements of revenues, expenses, and we've listed it, statement of cash flows. And then, we require that it are all per GAAP standards. I mean, that's part of why I listed, up above that they would be, that everything would be per industry standard. And so, but that's what, and I think, one of the things about the disclaimer is that it'll just start new. So the county though still has or as auditor, I care that we are able to explain what went on here.
So, Mr. Chairman, have you went through all your 4 points of recommendations yet?
Yeah, I mean, I could.
Can you read through those again, please?
Number 1 was that they retain certified accounting assistants.
Right.
A certified public accountant to help them. The reason we put that one in there is that they worked very hard to assist in the cutover a lot of time, as did, we paid to have the CPA help them, and we're still here. So that one means get professional help.
Right.
The audited financials, again, I just went over some of those. SVM provide audited financials from a certified accounting firm. Number 3, a discrepancies report. It should address the discrepancies related to the $20,000 shortage in the futures fund. So directly speak to that for the county's benefit.
But also included in that, we spent $10,000 with your office to try to get to the bottom of it. So we're into a 30 now that we're behind.
Right. Well, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we spent 10 to help with the cutover process.
What's number 4?
And number 4 was, as there was just questions with the catering management reconciliation. There's some difficulty, reconciling that, and we would request their help in reconciling that and providing, audited results of that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, the chair recognizes Commissioner Bauman.
So the Clifton Larson Allen that provided those efforts, that was retained and at the request of and paid for by Franklin County?
Yes. As a bit of a background for you, Commissioner Bauman, Clifton Larson Allen was the firm that provided the public, it was a private sector performance audit of a public assembly venue. So they did have some, that was back, and when the county brought in new management at that time, there was a turnover at that time as well. There was some challenges out there that were addressed through that audit. They came back in to assist us here.
So they provided, I'm assuming that this is a summary kind of what they found on September the 21st of 23 from Jeff. And on line 6, it says client deposits and retainers has some issues which need to be addressed, and it goes and enumerates some of those. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that's somewhat their evaluation of what they found, but an incomplete, saying we need to look at this. Is that kind of, am I understanding that appropriately?
Yeah, I mean, okay. It was, again, we hired him to basically consult. So there's nothing beyond, having a CPA coming in and going, hey, here's what I saw. Here's an email summary of it.
So I have here the contract between Franklin County and SVM, and so I highlighted a couple of items here that I wanted to kind of ask about. Underneath the heading of contractor ongoing operational management, one of the items is prepare deposits, manage cash on hand, and prepare reports and invoices. Another one is create monthly reports. Did that happen throughout their tenure as the management firm? Was their monthly reports provided?
You would have to not to us. So again, that's why I highlighted in it that you had your county administrator and then you had a staff member that was kind of a liaison at that time. I'm assuming all of this contractual stuff would have gone to you, to the commissioner's office in those two positions. And then we were not, again, we were cut out. So we came in when questions were raised. The board asked the auditor's office to become involved. And there was just unanswered questions is really what they were. And then it just became, the communication broke down basically. And
So another one, it says oversee the collection of all revenue and bank deposits on behalf of the county and in compliance with the policies of the county and county auditor. Then you go under compensation, and it says contractor shall remit all revenue generated from the HAPO Center to the county in the manner directed by the county and at a monthly interval, and shall provide all accounting related to revenues generated consistent with any and all state and federal regulations. So the reason I have read that is the very last item in this before the signatures. It says records. Contractor shall keep all records generated by the contractor related to the performance of the contractor's duties under this agreement, consistent with the parties' duties under the Public Records Act. The contractor shall make any such records available upon a 10 days notice from the county in the format requested by the county. Contractor shall maintain any record generated under this agreement for a minimum of 10 years. This clause shall survive termination of the agreement. So my question is, have we, as a county, have we sent them a letter and said, please produce within 10 days this information? Do you have any idea if we have done that?
I think, there, and everybody has been cooperative, and that's why I have no reason to believe, based on this, if the county makes a request that the vendor, that SVM will comply. They've been cooperative. So I know
I'm
that
just wondering if we've actually made that request.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we've been able to interact with the HAPO Center and had access to. I mean, my understanding is those records all remained at the center.
There has been a request made at times, and ultimately we got some records from HWL that I think were SVM records.
I'm just asking SVM for a complete record. I just don't know if we've done that.
The commissioners, do we need to do it?
I think that's what the purpose of my letter is to you, is that their
Okay.
contract was with the county. It's with you. I'm just reporting on what the county auditor knows with regard to the.
That's what I'm trying to ask is that what we need to do now is to make a formal request for a complete record? Because going back to that letter from Clifton Larson Allen, they talk about something. This is something maybe you can help me have a better understanding of. They talk about converted deposits, and I'm not sure could you help me understand what that means?
Well, so you're into the weeds a little bit, and that's okay. And we can talk about those things individually. I think the purpose of this letter and this time with you guys today is to say, if we request these things of them per the contract, we'll just wait for them to produce them. I mean, obviously,
That's my question.
per the contract, we don't need them. I mean, they were cooperative and we had access to things when we assisted with the cutover. And so, and everybody was trying to work together. There was, different things going on. There was a lot of iterations of spreadsheets and a lot of stuff going on. So everybody was trying to get to the same place. Here's where we're at. We're at the audit phase. We're at the state auditor saying, hey, and so we had raised concerns with the state auditor regarding, here's what they said, but we can't show it to, we don't have it. They said, well, you need to, figure it out. We kind of tried to dig into it, and we could, we weren't in it. And
I guess I'm trying to ask is what should this look like of how we do it? Because I'm unfamiliar with converted
Sure.
deposits, and I'm not trying to get into weeds. I'm just trying to have an understanding of what is the appropriate direction that we should go at this point. Is it for us to ask our administrator to send a letter and ask for this information as a package? Is that what would help clarify this? I'm not sure.
Sure. I would say the 4 recommendations, sure, and we can work with.
Yeah, I think, and just for the rest of the board, I just resent them some of the materials that Auditor Beaton is speaking about, so it's at the top of your inbox, just so you have that readily available. I'll work with the auditor and probably a deputy prosecuting attorney to craft the letter that kind of outlines the recommendations and what the request would look like. And then if we need to confer with the board again, we would do that. But I'm pretty sure the 4 recommendations can be crafted in a way that makes sense.
Sure.
So I have one last question. The 10,000, did that include Clifton Larson's bill and your hours, or was that a separate bill?
I don't know if the county actually billed the HAPO Center for the hours. I believe the staff tracked or has some idea how much time we put in. It was,
So that 10,000 was just for CA?
that was, yeah, and I included actually, I think the invoices that we paid, the billings to Clifton Larson Allen,
CLA.
an hour and a half. I mean, I included all of the backup data in the packet to you.
Did you include your hours?
That's what I just said. I don't
Please
know
do.
that.
We've, in the past couple of years or so, we've started to do just a general accounting services bill to the HAPO Center, which is more for like accounts payable and payroll processing and things like that. So there was much more significant time spent on this project, and that was not directly billed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could also follow up a little bit with Commissioner Bauman's questions, because I think the state auditor has 2 components in their audit process. The number one is the financial one that we're speaking about now. The second one will address some of your questions in regards to accountability and whether or not the contract itself was managed in a manner that was consistent with how it was stipulated. And so Mike McCall with HWL is here today. He and I have been working through kind of making sure in a tracking system that we are on a weekly basis, or we meet once a week, but on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, whatever the contract is stipulating, and then providing the documentation for those types of activities. So did it exist prior? I've been working a little bit with Bo and IT to look at the historic electronic communications, some things that were in place so that we can see what documentation exists, so that we can assure that the accountability audit, when it comes forward, we can show how the contract was being managed.
So do we anticipate when the SAO comes back in what you feel is January, do we anticipate them, and this is way outside of, I don't even know how to ask this question, do we anticipate them providing a corrective action required type thing, or?
No, I think the purpose of the disclaim is, as he explained, we have no opinion.
The SAO is a reporting agency, not an enforcement agency. So they tell you what's wrong. They tell you what's wrong, but ultimately, even if there's money misspent on a federal program, it's ultimately up to the federal overseer to take action on it if they want to. SAO strictly reports.
So I guess you're kind of developing my question a little bit there. Do we anticipate their report saying we can't figure this out? Do we anticipate that report causing us to have to take action in one way or another?
I think
whether it's with consequences, not the SAO, but some other.
I think, so the way it works, the way I interpret it in our meeting with them is they're very likely going to disclaim. I'm certain they are. And, they're a reporting agency, not going to tell you what to do, but they are going to, when they start with the new line, you know, like he said, the audit may be more expensive because they're going to come back and go, hey, this was a mess. What have you done? That's what this letter was about, is to say, here's the actions we should take to demonstrate to the public and to the SAO that we understand what happened here. We are doing everything within our power to rectify that. And then I really appreciate Mr. Johnson's approach to this. The original Clifton Larson Allen performance audit, I don't know if you have it, but it set up a standard, a reporting standard because of past issues. I mean, there's not necessarily past issues. Public assembly venues have a lot going on, a lot of accounts, a lot of things. And so, and it's always been, you know, for Franklin County, it's something that, you know, people are interested in. And so they had a reporting standard there that really never got implemented. And so it has to be a quarter, and, you know, just like the budgeting that we hope to set up and start to follow closely, I really appreciate Eric's work with HWL. And I believe, you know, one of the great things about HWL at this point is that they have every bit of interest in this reporting so that you know that how good of a job they're doing, basically. And so that's, you know, anybody, that's the good way to go. So
I just, as I was listening through and you describing the seriousness of the SAO doing a disclaim, just wondering if there is consequential potential action that we should, you know, identify and try to address.
One of the main possible financial ramifications that I saw just looking up disclaimer of opinion was potential like bonding issues where you can't get bonds. Now, the HAPO Center,
You get a downgraded bond.
yes, and so the HAPO Center is its own fund. So I don't know and I don't know that we're looking for bonds for the HAPO Center anyway. But I don't know that it would impact. I'm not entirely certain either way whether it would impact the county as a whole because, you know, current expense isn't part of the HAPO Center. And so we may, I don't know if it would affect maybe it would affect our overall rating even as far as current expense, even though the HAPO Center is its own separate fund.
that would be I would say a question for the treasurer and then her bond, you know, the financial committee's bond person.
If I could just add, maybe just to remind the board, there's a typically you could get a management letter, or you could get a finding, and then
Exit items.
Exit management.
exit items, et cetera. So the county's also given the opportunity to respond, and your response typically, well, sometimes your response is, we just think you're wrong. That happens periodically where we just disagree with the SAO, and that's, accountants disagree on things from time to time, so you could disagree. Or you could agree or you could just say, thank you, we'll take corrective action. Or you can actually lay out the things that you have already done because you're having these conversations throughout, and that may be something that you want to do in the disclaimer component, is even lay out the things that you are already taking action on, that you are proactive, that you completely understand what they're saying on both the financial side and the accountability side. So there are different ways to be looking at it as well. So I think that's your question about how do we the things that we're doing proactively, in the fact that we've identified this for sure. They are certainly aware of these issues. So I think you've done a nice job laying the issue out and the potential steps we can take moving forward as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate you kind of did identify what I'm trying to develop or understand there, and that is we've identified that this is not best practice, and what should best practice look like going forward, and how do we develop that? Thanks.
And certainly I think a large part of that is how we've moved all of our financial activities in-house, where they're using our system for invoices and everything around. So we have taken steps in that already, which is good.
And you will have an opportunity to participate. I assume the board gets the opportunity to participate in the exit interview when things come up.
Yeah, in Franklin County, I think we hold those exits as a part of the commissioners meeting.
Great.
So.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think one of the first courses of action to show that we're taking all the proper steps is to formulate that letter and send it off for a 10-day response.
I would agree.
We'll work.
Happy to work with your staff to,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
I will say,
bringing
we did share this letter with the SAO as well. I mean, just to let them know, you know, what's going on, and so we'll keep working on it. Thank you.
that. Thank you. I appreciate your work. Item number 5, Resolution 2024-0301, 2025 COLA for non-bargaining employees, presented by Margot Wilder, Human Resources Director. Good morning.
Good morning. So this resolution before you, excuse me, is for the 2025 COLA for the non-bargaining employees. One of the other aspects on it would to be removing grade 10. That was presented to you in the budget hearings because of removing that from the first up because of the minimum wage increase. These would be effective January 1st of 2025. So it would be the 2025 one with the removal of step 10, or grade 10, apologize. Did you have any questions?
Questions?
Is this where I read that we're eliminating step 10?
Yes,
Okay.
grade 10,
Yeah, because it's below minimum wage.
yeah.
No use having it anymore.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which
Thank
was the commissary visitation clerks were
Yes.
bumped up to 11 for that reason, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move, is there any further discussion? I move to approve Resolution 2024-0301 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously, or resolution. Moving on to item number 6, Resolution 2024-0302, position changes approved with the 2025 budget, presented by Margot Wilder, Human Resources Director.
So this resolution is just because of the Franklin County Salary Administration Compensation Review Policy that was established in 2019, outlines the positions, whether creation, budget changes, what have you, that occurred during the budget season. In the resolution is outlined for each one of the offices, for both, I should say, current expense and the miscellaneous funds. So whether they're current expense or miscellaneous funds, and the changes that occurred for that budget season that were presented to you from each of the departments. So we have covering the clerk's office, civil service, the commissioner's office, information services, Office of Public Defense, commissary and RV park. I will mention the sheriff's office is indicated in there just because last year there was a misrepresentation of how many FTEs. It was below the number. It was listed as 7, and there's actually 8 out of those current expense funds. There is another one for the miscellaneous funds, but that wasn't mentioned last time. So that's the only reason the sheriff's office is in there for this one, is just to correct that FTE number.
All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
did you say treasurer's office also?
No. Clerks, civil service, commissioners, information services, Office of Public Defense, sheriff, commissary, and RV park.
I do believe I read an email this morning where the treasurer wanted to be included in this, did they not?
Yeah, both the treasurer and we'll hear from the prosecutor will be asking for that, but that has not come before the board yet for approval.
So approve this one, and then those will come in another.
Those two will come.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve Resolution 2024-0302.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I will open the open public hearing, Resolution 2024-0303. Open public hearing for renewal of Charter Communications Franchise Agreement, presented by Shirley Jones, Project Analyst.
I'll
Good morning, Craig.
introduce the subject. Mrs. Jones is here to answer any specific questions that you might have.
Thank you.
The franchise agreement in question began in 2009 and was renewed in 2013. The purpose of this hearing is to consider the renewal of the agreement for 10 years. Under Chapter 36.55 of the Revised Code of Washington, And under Chapter 47 of the U.S. Code, Section 541, the county may enter into franchise agreements subject to the state and federal laws. Charter has substantially complied with the terms of the current agreement and has demonstrated the ability to provide services to meet the needs of the community. Notifications for this open public hearing have appeared in the Franklin County Graphic and at the courthouse. I'm happy to answer questions, or Mrs. Jones can answer.
Questions?
No questions here.
So as I read through it, I have a particular, I don't know how you properly say this, love-hate relationship with a franchise agreement. It took me about 18 months to work my way through a franchise agreement where a jurisdiction outside of Franklin County, their franchise agreement stipulated that the jurisdiction said that the contractor had to build, install, and do at their sole expense on behalf of the franchisee. So it was quite the process to work its way through there. So I read this very, very carefully. And so really the only comment that I would have, one comment and one question. So in 8.8 of this, it talks about, and this really is a Scribner's error, this I'm sure was a template, and it says city versus describing it as county.
Oh, okay.
And then another question, we talked about this way back earlier in the year when we were having the discussion about budget shortfalls and the potential opportunities for revenue. And so it talks about us getting a percentage of their revenue that they expense across this. Do you have any idea what that is? It talks about it being paid, I think, quarterly.
No, I don't have any figures on exactly what that would look like. And this is something new. We're planning on, along with the help from the prosecutor's office, to workshop an ordinance for the county. So this is really the first time that we've done this. Generally speaking, before we have not had that kind of fee set up. So I'm not sure how that is going to play out in reality yet. We're still looking at data from other counties that have initiated, which aren't many.
Would it be appropriate to wait on this until Jeff can be here? This is a pretty complex thing, and I'm asking the question.
It's, the rest of the franchise agreement, the charter's already signed off on it. I think we can move ahead with this particular one and then look at the ordinance going forward.
It appears that this has been expired for some time. Do you know how long that has been?
I would assume probably 2 years. They usually run in 10-year increments.
I'm just wondering if time is of the essence.
Yes and no. We don't like them to expire, but we have a lot of them. They're difficult to manage. It's kind of up to the utility to contact us to renew it. Sometimes that falls through. Sometimes we will reach out to them and let them know, hey, it's coming up. What do you want to do? But we have a lot of these to manage, and they're in various states, and companies have combined and changed hands and so forth. So it can be a complicated process.
If I may add, Charter would like to have this completed by the end of the year also. That was a request on their part as well.
I was just wondering, not knowing, having had the discussion a little bit earlier about, charging franchisees a fee for the use of the public right-of-way, and our Jeff not being here. Do you have an opinion on that?
I don't have an opinion on that. Realistically, I think Jeff has been handling this and is
yeah,
fully
and he
aware of
did
the
he did
process.
sign off on this and gave us, because I asked the questions too. It's like, are we ready to do this? And it was his opinion that we were.
Jeff did say that he felt that we should move forward with this, that will not affect anything, because we asked that question as far as with the ordinance coming up, and he said, I see no problem in moving forward with this agreement.
I just, having almost entirely committed one of these documents in another jurisdiction to memory. I was impressed with some of the updates that I seen in this one versus the way that one was. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So at this point, I will ask if there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on this issue. Hearing none. Any further discussion? At this point, I will close the open public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of Resolution 2024-0303.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 9.
8.
Discussion. 8. We just passed 8.
We did 7.
You just did 7.
Eric's presenting this one.
So, Resolution 2024-0303.
Oh, you don't have, yeah, David?
That's what we just passed. 0303.
Okay, that was my understanding. So now we're moving on to what mine says is number 10, agreement with the City of Richland on behalf of Benton County Emergency Services, presented by Eric Johnson, County Administrator.
Okay, it's so it's Resolution 202-40304. This is an agreement with the City of Richland on behalf of Benton County Emergency Services. You have been briefed on this a number of times. I am happy to certainly go into additional detail again on that. We also have with us Mike and Bo, if you guys want to come on up, Jay, if you want to come on up, if there's questions available to you. I do want to remind you, what this agreement is about. You have been talking about years about, creating the infrastructure for emergency discussion or emergency communications. We have had presentations from the group in the past. A number of you serve on boards to represent the county in relationship to this issue. It is about creating a system for the ability for intergovernmental communication and interoperability between Richland, Kennewick, Pasco, Franklin County, Benton County, and all of the rural fire districts and emergency services. And so I don't want to belabor this one. We have briefed it before. I know you have questions. I know some of you have made your opinions well known, but this is the final time we have to authorize this and proceed. We now are time sensitive with a sense of urgency to make this final decision. So that's why it's before you today. If the board has any questions or comments they want to make, but we do have folks here to answer questions as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
So how does, let's use an example of Stevens County. What do they use for emergency radio services?
As far as I know, unless something has changed since I left the area, they're using a VHF system similar to the system we have that's failing.
Okay. How do they keep theirs updated?
I'm sure they're probably going through the similar types of scenarios that we are. I don't know. I haven't spoken with anyone up there. Spokane, as an adjacent county to Stevens County, we had a lot of interaction between the two. Spokane County moved to 800 megahertz system in I think we went live in 2013. Don't quote me exactly on that. So from that standpoint, VHF has kind of been out of the realm for Spokane, and we kind of severed our connection with Stevens County at that point.
Yeah. I only asked because I had somebody ask me, and their understanding was how do they communicate up there when there's no cell service?
So one thing I'll add to that is as the systems went in at different times in history, of course.
Okay.
And so everybody is moving towards this failure point that we are in now. Some people have planned a little better. They've got, plans where they're going or how they're getting there. folks that have been in the exact same position and have moved past it that didn't go with the trunked 800 system would be, for example, Walla Walla. Walla Walla was in the same boat. They have upgraded their system to the new Tate system that Commissioner Didier brought to our attention. And the thing is, that system will last for the longevity of the equipment itself. Then that technology is gone. Then they will need to move on to the next technology, which is going to come up prior to what the 800 system or the system that we're looking at. And we're expanding an existing system here with an agreement to keep that up to date. If we were to pick the Tate system, like for example what Walla Walla did, we could do that, but in 5 years or something short of 10 years, we would be sitting here doing these exact same questions and trying to come up with how we're going to fund it, and we wouldn't have the same partnerships that we have today.
I think the other piece of that too is the VHF as a technology. So part of this project, federal engineering was hired to do a study. So it wasn't only just to upgrade the system to more current equipment, to keep the longevity piece. It was also to improve coverage. That was one of the key requirements that the fire service brought forward, because we have some significant gaps in coverage. So with that component specifically, as Mike alluded, yes, we could upgrade and put new equipment on the mountaintops as it sits today, but it wouldn't achieve the second piece, which is coverage. So in order to do that, we would have to add sites and do some other things. The problem is that federal references in their study is that VHF is what you call a very noisy frequency band. So in urban settings and certain other environments, you lose coverage because of all of that, what we call floor noise. The other piece of that too is that, I just lost my train of thought. It was the floor noise and, the lack of ability to get additional frequencies in that band in order to expand your coverage. So that's the other obstacle that we're up against. In order to expand coverage, we'd have to try to leverage more frequencies from the FCC, which is not readily available. So those are two reasons that kind of play against spending money on something that, as Mike alluded, would be a sunk technology probably in 5 to 10 years.
So we cannot be the only county in the state that's facing this
Correct.
predicament. What are the odds of the state stepping in and helping with financially?
So we're working that front. Commissioner Baumann has reached out to several of the local legislators, so we are, beating down, so to speak, every door that we can, but we don't have anything immediately on the horizon to pay the bill today. I think, from my perspective, a strategy is if we get this done, use the financing as a vehicle to get us down the path of getting the system started. We have that ability after the fact to come up with whatever funding mechanism we can to then pay that loan back. There's no prepayment penalty on the loan. We won't have to pay any interest penalties, any of those sorts of things. So the obligation can end as soon as we have the ability to pay all or chunks back with other funding mechanisms.
Well, I have heard that Governor-elect Ferguson has made it his priority for public safety. And nothing could be more public safety driven than this program.
I would agree. I think the concern that I would have is that time is of the essence at this point. Mike can probably speak better than I can as to the longevity of the system that we are currently using, and the longer we delay getting something moving forward to replace it, we might have this weird overlap of inability to communicate before something new gets put in its place.
Sure. Any questions?
Just comments. So our CCOM partners are already in this, so to change over to Tate, that's why we'd be alienated. We wouldn't be able to communicate with our partners, correct?
Completely not. You would be able to communicate with them, depending on the frequency band. So Tate is a manufacturer. As long as we utilized the same technology that CCOM is using, we could use Tate equipment. We would lose the feature set, and we would have to engineer an interface to the Motorola. So it'd be Motorola and Tate interfacing together, and that's fairly complex, and that is going to run the price up. And on top of that, with the proposal that's before you today with the financial cost sharing, the cost is going to be significantly more than what we're being asked to come up with here.
And I think the other part of this is, we've talked about this with the commission before, but the trajectory that we're on with BCES is for that organization to become independent. So out from underneath the umbrella of Richland. So if that's the case, the other piece with this system expansion and all of the mobiles and portables that we would be buying, we want to move to what's called a central distribution system for managing subscribers and then in turn managing the system. If we have two disparate systems, then yes, they're connected by an interface, but the management of that system then becomes highly difficult. So at that point, you're really having to deal with something comes due to be upgraded or updated with Tate. That's one piece, and then we're still going to have to do it with the Motorola side on the other. Same thing with radios. Anytime that what we call the fleet map is changed, and so that's the layout of the channels in a radio, that would require a reprogram, and then that's going to require for every brand of radio that's brought into the system, that's a separate what we call code plug. So that code plug exists to program that specific radio by specific agency, et cetera. So the management piece for that becomes very problematic and probably wouldn't allow us to go down that path of central distribution and management.
Do the sheriff's deputies, fire, and EMT, are they don't get cell phones, do they? Is that part of this as a cell phone or no?
No.
No,
Because
the sheriff's department deputies do have cell phones as part of their duties, but it is not related to the public safety communications piece.
Are they on Starlink?
I don't believe they are.
I think that would be a great addition to get rid of the dead spots in Franklin County. A cell phone on Starlink, because everybody I talk to, even up in Stevens County, they have great communication. Because you're bouncing off of satellites and not off of repeaters.
So the sheriff's office has AT&T phones that are on FirstNet, so they are improved coverage. They will work on towers that are outside of AT&T, but they will still experience the same shortfalls that the radios will up north in the low coverage areas.
But I think we should be looking at Starlink for phones. And that would cut our costs on towers for the sheriffs up in North Franklin County. It wouldn't help out fire and ambulance, but I don't know of anybody that does their best work when they're under pressure, and we're under pressure to get this done because it has been kicked down the road to the point now we got to make a decision.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, the chair recognizes Commissioner Bauman.
Would you speak to if all of the big five as we call it, if all the big five sign this contract, and then kind of I believe the kind of hoped for trajectory of the standalone agency, I believe is still roughly on track for January 1st of 2026. So if that does happen, could you kind of speak to what the responsibility as far as the financial component of this would look like if and when that becomes a standalone agency?
Sure. So if that does happen, again, as part of the terms of this loan and agreement, the standalone independent agency, as long as it meets financial requirements, can assume liability for that loan. The issue at hand will still be, how do we cover the cost of that loan? So the bill is no longer being sent to Richland, it's being sent to the new entity, BCS, whatever that's called down the road. But at that point, the other thing that at least that I see as a long-term solution is then that standalone entity we could go for a public safety sales communications tax. Similar, it's the same tax that was run here locally this last fall. Do it as a bi-county effort, and then those funds would be collected by both of the counties and then be funneled to the new organization, and then we could use that money to help pay for this liability and then start planning for the future as well.
Thank you for that. And then kind of speak to the overall, I've shared some of the efforts that I've put forth in meeting with our legislators, and we had a meeting there at CCOM with a lot of our legislators. I have been trying in my communications to not necessarily, because this is a regional effort, I've been trying to speak as a regional request, not saying, will you give Franklin County this, but this is a regional need, and, and so saying, we as a region need this help. Yep. And could you kind of speak to that? Because I believe that's been the strategy of CCOM for some time. That's
been the strategy for all funding that we've been chasing. So we did go after some federal grants. We chased CDS funding for 2024. Unfortunately, that kind of fell through just because the pot of money that we were trying to draw from was not really the appropriate channel of funds to try to levy for this kind of a project. We are going to go back after that in 2025. We have a better strategy for the money that we should request. We're also in the process regionally applying for 2 AFG grants, $2 million apiece, that if awarded, any of that money would be applied toward the mobiles and portables that we're going to have to buy. So we have that potential. I don't want to count chickens before they're hatched, but it sounds promising that we'd have a good shot at getting those 2 grants. And then aside from that, any other possible avenue for getting grant funding we're chasing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the effort. I've been digging in, trying to understand and trying to ask all those questions, and that's been helpful. Thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I guess the hardest pill for me to swallow is after we get this all put into place, we get the phone spot. We've spent, Franklin County, $5.9 million. Now we got a subscription fee every year of $3.5 million to make these radios work. Is that correct?
So I'll let Michael speak to it. So the commissioner, to be candid, that's a best guess right now. I personally don't believe that, and what you have to remember is that subscription fee is all in to help support the function of dispatch as it stands today. So if we are able to leverage, again, that public safety sales tax, for example, that's going to reduce the liability for all users across the board. So to be able to accurately tell you what that annual cost will look like, I really can't tell you 100%. I think the $3.5 million, even as it stands today, is fairly high.
And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that's just for Franklin County, correct? That estimate, or is that for the whole CCOM network?
The 3.5 estimate that you're discussing was for was for Franklin County and the city of Pasco combined as an estimate, and that was, again, it was a wild number. It's what we were trying to come up with without shorting an estimate to you. Since then, we've got some more better information, and we are not including Pasco in that number at this time. So for Franklin County, I'm now estimating it would be someplace at around the $2 million mark annually for subscription fees and the extras that we're going to pay if BCES does not become standalone, if BCES does not have a funding mechanism. Those are the ongoing fees. When you buy your cell phone and you've got the subscription fee, it's identical to that, what we're talking about here. What you're paying for is the upgrade and the upkeep of the infrastructure, the ongoing improvements that are going to go on. And frankly, if we go to this centralized distribution model, it would also be covering the radio that got run over by the fire engine out on the field, or the deputy that used it as a club.
So, as this central distribution model comes about, we would be it would operate similar to a county's ER&R fund, where that when the radio becomes obsolete, there's enough funds collected where that you're not going and buying new radios. A new radio is simply provided because the funds
Correct, yeah.
collected over time is generated to provide a replacement.
Yes.
And so it will keep us up to date with technology.
Correct. So the two things, regardless of whether we go independent or not, if we do go down a path of central distribution, that's the intent, is that as an organization, essentially BCES would be the repository for all subscriber units. So new police car goes into service, a new fire apparatus goes into service, whatever that looks like. Or as Michael said, somebody breaks a radio, whatever, they would come to BCES, say, hey, this is what I need, or this is what happened. That radio then would be issued. It would be an asset owned and tracked by BCES, and basically all of the assets would be on loan, for lack of a better term, to all of the different organizations. So they're no longer on the hook for that liability of, hey, I've got to plan ahead to pay for these radios for this apparatus or this police car or whatever. And in addition to that, we have what we call the SUA in place that supports our current 800 megahertz system. That would be in play then for the expanded system. And what that does is guarantees updates every 2 years, whether it be software or hardware, to ensure that any technological changes, advancements, et cetera, are addressed and applied to the system.
So essentially, this action would now take care of itself down the road.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I think our biggest concern past this will be, the sustainable funding for that organization to ensure that model can survive, obviously. That's the model we utilized in Spokane County. It's very successful. It works great. They have the 0.1% public safety sales tax supporting that. So that's what makes that, as successful as it is. So, if we don't go down that path, then we'll have some obstacles to make that successful. But to me, that seems to be the easiest way to go, because then you have essentially one organization that you have to rely on to supply the radios, to program the radios, and to maintain the system. And right now, we have bifurcation, on multiple levels with the way that the systems are set up today.
So Commissioner Didier, to kind of address your question a little bit, we're putting out a lot of guesswork to come up with those numbers, and I'm referring to the 3.5 that you put out there. One of the things that helped me out a little bit in trying to come up with this number, the current BCES budget in total is approximately $8 million. Mm-hmm. That would be divided amongst the 4 entities. Essentially, that's what we're talking about, those ongoing subscriber costs.
If we didn't join, if we join, it's 5, correct?
Well, we would have, it would be 5 entities, correct?
Yeah,
5
5
entities.
entities.
5 entities that would share in that cost.
Right.
Now, the system is expanding, and we don't know where those dollars are going to end up, because the SUA agreement is going to change. We're adding additional communication sites to what their existing system is. We do not believe that the budget is going to double, so we don't think that the new budget is going to be $16 million, but it will be someplace in the middle there. It's going to most likely increase a little bit from 8, but it'll be less than the 16 is our guess at this time. And so then that's divided amongst the users. And whether the county then puts into some place, if we don't go to the BCS model, if the county says we need to charge the smaller agencies some fee to make up a part of your 1/5, that's stuff to be discussed down the road. But basically, if we don't go down this path, we go from I'm rounding numbers here, but let's say we go from a $7 million bill to a full $30 million or $40 million bill, and fees into the future that are going to be costing us to replace that equipment.
Any further questions? At this time, I'll entertain a motion. This has to be decided upon today, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Tomorrow, this goes before the BCES board for approval, and then it goes to the city of Richland to sign off to actually authorize the signing of the contract. And the dollars go away on December 23rd if we have not provided this to Motorola.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the initial start of this agreement, and we are committed to right around $1 million that we have in our emergency fund at this time, correct?
Correct. I'll say around $1 million. Right now, I believe the number is around 800.
It's about $825K per year.
And we have money in our emergency fund to cover that, but then we're committed to keep going on.
Yes, for 10 years, you're committed on that.
So we, in our budget that we just passed, is that first portion which pays for the microwave portion of the system.
Correct. That is not, that is outside of this agreement.
Correct.
That takes care of 2025, 2026. I'm assuming first quarter of 26 would be the first.
So the first
800,000 or
the first payment on this agreement would be due 2026.
Correct.
Likely the first quarter.
Correct.
Yeah, so the timing, and I asked a couple of questions just to confirm before, I didn't want to say anything out of order, but the bill would come basically January 1st of 26, would be 30 days to pay the invoice. Richland would make that payment and then bill back to the partner agencies, and those agencies, based on this agreement, would have 30 days to make that payment. So by basically the end of February, that 8.25 would be due of 26.
And when would the next payment be due? The following year?
The following year, February of
So
27.
every year?
Every year, annually, unless we come up with another mechanism to, buy down that debt.
And any grants would be applied, any grants would be applied and then subtracted from the appropriate location. So if it's a Franklin County specific grant and it had to go to this agency, then all of that would be calculated in to reduce the payments.
The other thing too that I would add is that I don't want us to also lose sight of, we're committing to 30 million, but that's not the final number necessarily. There are options in this package that if we don't need them, then we will get that money back, and that will come off the top end of that loan. So how that looks exactly, I don't know. I don't know if that'll reduce an annual payment or if it just comes off the total and it'll shorten the length of time for that commitment. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we do have that to consider as well as if we don't need to buy all of the subscriber units that we have in this current quote, and if we don't need the 3 urban sites downtown, then we stand to probably regain, I'll say conservatively $3 to $4 million.
So there's a mechanism in this agreement, if we reduce sites necessary, which we think that there's a real possibility that we would potentially reduce up to 3, and then as well as subscriber units. If we find that there's a way that we can reduce the need for subscriber units, that's also in this contract to reduce it by the...
Yeah, we are not committed to have to buy, it's roughly, the quote is for just a hair over 1,700 subscriber units. If we buy 1,600, we're not on the hook for that extra 125 units or whatever it pencils out, so...
And to speak to that, we have gotten some commitments from some of the law enforcement agencies, especially on the mobile radio side, the ones that are installed in the vehicles. They'll let their existing radios ride until they need to be replaced, at which time that'll be down the road. And so they'll be able to live out their life cycle in the vehicles rather than replace everything up front. Portables are a little bit different because of the features that are in them. So we will have to do that, but we've got some agencies that don't need all of those features. And so we're coming up with a plan how to hand the ones that we have on hand down to some of these agencies that don't need those feature sets. And then that would potentially reduce the number of portables we need to buy.
So as seen today, it's 29.9 million divided by 5 agencies plus interest over the course of a 10-year finance plan.
So the contract came in at just under 30 million, 29.9 and some change. With tax, it's about 32 million. So we'll finance that entire amount with Motorola. The annual payment with interest based on 4.497% is just a hair over 4.1 million annually. And then that's divided 5 ways. And that's where we came up with the 8.25.
City of Pasco signed off on this?
Yes, they passed it Monday night.
Did they say, are they willing to finance their part of it?
Yes, they committed. They approved
They did
this finance agreement, the same document that you're considering today. They've approved it. So
That would lower our cost.
no, that cost that you're getting presented is only if all 5 are on board.
Yes.
If somebody dissents, then
But-
it's going to change the entire scope of the project. We'll have to go back to the drawing board.
What I'm saying is 5.9, if they pay their portion, we're not paying all of that, correct?
They are one of the big 5.
You're paying 1/5
They are one of
of
the big 5.
We would have covered their share had the tax
tax,
passed.
yes.
Since that tax didn't pass, it's just 5 individual.
And I wouldn't count on that tax passing. We heard from the people, and I don't think they're gonna be passing any tax increases with the environment that we're living in today.
Yeah, and Franklin County would have done Pasco's portion had that tax passed. With it not passing, Pasco's doing their own. And so it's divided by 5, not by 4.
Gotcha. Okay.
I did want to make one more statement just for clarification. Emergency Communications does have about $900,000 in there, and that is earmarked for the microwave portion that we're responsible for next year. Through the budget adoption, there was another $100,000 that was going to go in there to make that $1 million. So I just want to make sure that was clarified.
And that was budgeted for 2025 for the microwave project that has already been approved.
That is correct.
So should this fail today, what happens to the microwave project?
The microwave project is still moving forward. So that's a phase 1 component that has to be done no matter what we do. That system or that project is what we call the backhaul. So that carries a transmission from mountaintop to mountaintop. Whether we're on VHF, 800, or otherwise, we still have to have that in place. That's moving forward. So whatever happens today is not a detriment to that project.
Hold one second. So, actually, it is not a detriment to the project as far as Benton County is concerned. From what I understand, if we do not agree to the 800 megahertz, or this proposal, which then expands the 800 megahertz system from Benton County into Franklin County, Benton County would have no need. They would be taking over the microwave system, which would have no transport, and that could potentially, if it builds out as designed, would incur new costs for Franklin County, because whatever system, because you're not going to be able to not do something. Something has to be done. You're gonna have to build a system. So you would basically be giving our microwave system under the current project to Benton County or CCOM, and then you would be having to come up with a lease agreement or something to get that space back if they built it out. And it was indicated to me that they may say, you know, we don't need we don't need the sites in Franklin County for the 800 system if we're not expanding the 800 system there. So we're not going to add that as part of the SUA, and they would modify the agreement. Even though there would be a cost, it would be less than what the cost to build the whole thing out was. So it could be chopped off of that microwave and alter that microwave contract, which then could potentially get rid of the $1 million that's due in 2025 to some lesser amount, because we would still have to pay whatever portion there was still we're obligated for. But we don't. You then also will have to come up with additional money besides the radio. You'll also have to be looking at upgrading the microwave on the Franklin County side, because the plan currently is to eliminate some of the sites because we're consolidating resources. We just had failures that we recovered from yesterday on Jump Off Joe, which that site was going away. That site would now be back in play and would have to stay there, which is going to make this an even larger project for Franklin County.
Any further questions or discussion?
I don't believe I have any further questions.
At this point, I will entertain a motion. As much as I don't want to spend money we don't have, I don't see any other alternative. So I will make the motion to approve Resolution 2024-0304. Lack of a second, the motion fails. Thank you. Commissioner Administrator updates. Johnson.
We amended the agenda to add an item number 9 for prosecuting attorney's office staffing discussion.
All right. Moving on to item 9, discussion on prosecutor's office. Presented by, I'm assuming, Sean Sant?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Trying to fix and correct what we see is another staffing shortage coming our way. We currently have 3 positions open and 1 is slated to become vacant again effective January 3. I've discussed within the office, some decisions have been made as far as proposals to try to sort this out as far as some changes. This board has said if we could make adjustments within our budget, the board would be open to it. And one of the discussions that I've had with Eric Johnson and Margot over the last couple weeks is trying to figure out where we are as far as with our current salaries, where we need to be. Some of the recommendations come from the Consor study, recognizing some key positions throughout the county that need some adjustment, and one of those is deputy prosecutors, recognizing the level of minimum education necessary for the job. The current staffing throughout the state, you've heard about it from prosecutors' perspective, OPD perspective, trying to recruit prosecutors out of law school. We've had a vacant position open for the entire year, not getting people that are willing to come over. And that's a position that is listed as a senior DPA with recognizing years of experience and still not being able to get applicants to apply for that, qualified applicants that have the skill set that we're looking for. So one of the things that we're trying to do is look at where we are with our existing budget for '24. We did something back with ARPA funding to try to make a change. When we did the change for an incentive or a retention recruitment bonus, it came with a catch that the individuals that were receiving those funds would have to sign on and agree to stay for a year. And that if they do leave, then they'd have to pay back the pro rata share for any portion of the bonus that they received for that. And we've seen other counties paying upwards of $30,000 as a recruitment effort, as sign-on bonuses or retention things. We're looking at simply trying to do a similar fix here for helping us out with the current year, which is making some changes to my chief deputy positions. That would be adjusted by us going with unfilled positions for '25, and this we recognize as a catch-22, because if you are already short positions but we're not recruiting, the worst thing that could happen during that time is you lose others. And if you lose others and you're unable to recruit, then that just compounds the problem. So trying to look at two things. One is our existing '24 budget. One of the things that we looked at, and now that our departments are tasked with also coming up with the COLA payments, we're keeping that in mind as well. But one of the things that would help us out with the board's approval is allowing us to take existing 2024 funds that have gone from unfilled positions. We've had a DPA position that has been vacant since October 18th of this year. We've also had that vacant senior DPA position that has gone unfilled. And looking at those numbers as well as other areas that we do have funds for 2024's allocated budget, if we could do something similar with the 10% retention incentive with 2024 funds, I could then fund the changes that I'm proposing to make to our chief positions, which recognizes their skill set, their experience level, and trying to keep them on for 2025. So that essentially means that we're going to go without with the unfilled senior DPA position. That will continue through 2025. It'll also require us to keep unfilled a senior DPA position that becomes vacant on January, I believe it's January 9. So there's going to be a period of time for that. We have our district court position that has been vacant since October 18th. We anticipate having a bar in February, at the end of February, with bar results posted likely April. So that's going to be another position that will likely not be able to be filled until we get bar results from that. So really what we have is we have 3 vacant positions now. We will have a 4th if I'm not able to make some changes, and that will be pretty significant impact for our office. We've already been trying to get caught up from some of the delays with closures throughout COVID. I think we've done a great job managing things with the staff that we have. One of the things you hear about over the years is the increased staffing of law enforcement. We add more officers to the streets, but what we don't see is we don't see an additional increase of folks added to the prosecutor's office, to the clerks, to the court system to really accommodate some of those increases. So one of the things that we've suffered from the growth in our county is we're basically trying to do an increase of work over the years with fewer bodies, and basically in a situation where we are not able to recruit and we struggle to retain certain key positions. So what I'm asking of the board is, based on what the board has said and what we've looked at, is that, hey, if we can make these changes within our budget, crunch the numbers, would the board authorize us reissuing a 10% retention incentive for DPAs going into the next year, as well as making a change for my 3 criminal chiefs that will be budgeted out of the 2025 allocation with available positions that we have and other areas. One of the additional areas of sourcing that I think needs to be looked at is when we initiated litigation, we joined up with a firm back, I believe, in 2016, looking at the opioid situation. So we initiated that process because of the cost that is borne by counties throughout our state and throughout the country. We've received now some of the proceeds for that, and we could allocate those proceeds for our therapeutic courts. One of the things that I'm trying to get confirmation on is some of the funding that we are able to also bill out. So in other words, we're looking at funding sources that come outside of our current expense, and one of those sources is our mental health tax. Part of the mental health tax, in addition to using proceeds for developing a recovery center that will hopefully provide some long-term savings and care on significant issues of drug usage, mental health issues by those individuals in our community. But the tax allows to also cover for therapeutic courts, and that's something that's extremely important. Our office has had its own version of trying to have a diversionary type of program that we've had. It was implemented by my predecessor, but because of, again, budgeting issues, staffing issues that we've had since I took office, we've had to make adjustments to figure out how can we take some of those lower level felony crimes, push those individuals almost as a standard into our felony diversion program that's operated through district court and whatnot. Now we have a therapeutic court that does have that funding source. It's outside funding, not within current expense. And I'm trying to confirm some of the numbers, but basically we allocate a portion of the monies that are spent for a therapeutic court defense to give the same amount of funding for our office as well, because obviously there's a component of administrative work that is done as well as the prosecutor that's involved in handling those cases, not just in court time, but in staffing time, reviewing cases for eligibility. Really, there's a triage process that goes through the office because sometimes we don't have all the information that defense attorneys are able to gather when they meet with their clients, and we get information after the fact that suggests their clients are eligible for consideration for therapeutic court. So really it is a team effort with folks in the office, and it routes that to therapeutic court. So we've looked at funding sources outside to be able to fund some of these proposed changes and hopefully retain these key positions. Part of that funding would be from the mental health tax for the equivalent of about a 0.4 FTE. I recognize that's a pretty minimal amount. One of the things that we had a recent discussion on, as I think commissioners know, there's a deputy prosecutor guild for those that are in non-management positions within my office or non-civil attorneys within my office. And I know one of the moves that the commissioners are trying to look at for adjusting as far as overall cost is the issue with the VEBA contributions and trying to get that consistent throughout bargaining units and non-bargaining units. Even though it is a relatively small change, it's something that I think contributes to the long-term goals of this board, which they've shared. And so I've made the pitch to the deputies that would be affected that if we're able to move this 10% retention incentive, would they be agreeable with basically adopting the non-barg VEBA contributions that have been proposed? Because my understanding is right now, because they are a bargaining unit like the other bargaining units, that will be carried over to the other year. But that's one area where we've identified that, hey, we could have some long-term that would be a policy change, an agreement that they've been willing to consider as well. So that brings them basically in line with the non-bargaining agreements for the VEBA contribution. So that's that reduction there. I recognize that is not going to be as significant as covering this, but it's certainly, when we're looking at budgets, we look at what are long-term impacts as well. And as I've told the board, back when we used ARPA funds, as the county was considering some of these retention incentives for other departments as well, one of the keys that was identified is we were significantly understaffed and trying to compete with, competing counties. Frankly, Benton County is going to be our biggest competitor. We've tried to recruit individuals come into our county, and they've gone over to Benton, and I recognize there's sometimes funding is part of it, benefits, things like that. There's a lot of areas to contemplate, but when we do have a significant disparity, that will put us at a disadvantage. So I did want the board to be aware, we are looking at trying to look at kind of this comprehensive approach of figuring out if we have the funds available for 24, using that for our 10% DPA retention incentive conditioned upon an agreement that they remain employed with us for the year, but also the consideration that that does include that adoption of the VIVA proposal for the non-BARGs would also apply to them. Further, one of the things that I just want to last conclude, when we had to present to the board, we still have that same ongoing issue. When we presented this to the board in June of 23, and the board gave us flexibility to basically be able to bring in qualified deputies at either a grade 20 or grade 21 and put them at a step that would be appropriate or in consideration of their experience. We still haven't been able to do that. So that's what's kind of requesting this adjustment. We recognize also this will hopefully be an adjustment that could be included in one of our longer term proposals, working with Margot and HR, trying to look at how can we do this, keeping that 10% range, because essentially what that would have done if we did it as a salary for the year, that puts us in a pretty good and close enough mark, I think, in consideration of our county size and overall budget, but it keeps us at least closer in parity to where we wouldn't lose folks pursuing other local opportunities. So anyway, I'm asking this of the board, if the board could approve consistent with the funds that are in our available 2024 budget with unfilled positions. I believe that's kind of been the consideration. Also in being able to use the outside source of funding. One of the confirmations I'm looking for is whether or not that was considered. I don't believe it was actually dropped into our budget, but the consideration that we can pull mental health tax and other things, and frankly, because that was just discussed with the board, I think strategically we're also trying to look at, because a proportion of calls that are handled with our emergency system deal with people going through mental health crises, can we pull from the existing funding that we do have from our mental health tax or other things? So we are trying to dive into that and look for that opportunity, because again, looking at existing funding sources, existing tax sources, I know is key for this board. Certainly that's what we're trying to do in our office. We haven't really had, you look at some of these other budgets over the years, and really our main budget is driven by the cost for benefits and wages, and we're still playing catch up, trying to retain key people, key attorneys, key deputies in the office. If we lose anybody else, it's going to drastically change what kind of services we can provide to court, which means cases will be delayed in filing, or we have to drastically reduce charging decisions based on our available resources. So anyway, I ask that of the board, if the board would authorize us to coordinate with our available funding for 24, develop our 10% retention incentive for our DPAs, and then allow us to structure appropriately for the 2025 year with that budget for unfilled positions, to make the proposal for bringing up my chiefs to 90% of my salary, which is pretty close. It's about a drop compared to like Benton County. Benton County has their deputies at 80% of the elected prosecutor's salary, which is identical to the Superior Court judges. Rather than adopting a salary tied to an outside entity, I figured I'd want to just simply make it tied or connected to my salary here. So it's basically kept within our Franklin County considerations. But putting it there puts it at a competitive edge. And again, if I'm able to do that and fit that in with our existing unfilled positions into 25, I'd ask for approval to be able to do that. So thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Is it your proposal to come back with something, with a proposal next week? Is that what your ask is?
The main reason I'm doing this at the time I am is the one chief that I have on the criminal side is looking at an opportunity, and timing is essentially of the essence. I would need to have a commitment from the board that if we could make the numbers fit, and I believe from looking at the numbers I've received, we can do that and I can make that work, but that also includes the board allowing me to use the available 2024 funds for the incentives. So those don't get paid out until January, but when we allocate or commit those funds that are available in the 2024 year, it's basically using our existing budget funding for that. And then 2025 would be paying it with the adjustments and known shortages that we already have, but it also will be covered by the delay of being able to fill those positions as well.
So you would be bringing something next week. Next week's our last meeting.
That would be the plan. What I'm looking for is if that's enough, if the board is able to do that. I know the one that we are likely losing without something, but at least if I have the commitment from the board that, look, if you're able to, putting it on me, if I'm able to make this work with my existing budgets that has been presented for 25 as well as 24, if this could happen, if the board's in agreement with that, we will put the writing together and get that together for the board for next week.
So I'm new at this, so forgive me if this is an ignorant question. So this would tie the deputies to your salary?
The three
chief deputies.
Yes.
And then is your salary tied to, does it have is it automatically adjusted?
Mine
over
gets
time?
my salary is paid half by the state, half by the county. The county contributes half of that adjustment, and mine is based on the Superior Court judge's salary. So they do that typically in July, and so they would adjust that in July. One of the proposals that I would suggest, or that was brought up, is that because we're making this change, that change for those positions would not occur in July of 25, but we would set that to take effect for January of the following year. So in other words, the correction occurs in July, but because we're making this move and adjustment this close to the 25 year, that would cover the change for 2025. So the next increase would be basically January 1 of 26. That would be looking back to what adjustments were made to my salary. And
back to July.
Yes, but it wouldn't be like a retro thing. It would be just effective January 1 of 26, but it would be based on that. Still on my current salary. So whatever my salary is for 26 or 27, the preceding years, it would stay consistent with that. And this is similar to, I guess, avoiding like the compression areas, and I know this is kind of a significant move to move the deputies or the chiefs, managers below to my position, because this does not affect anything with my salary. I'm not asking for an increase in mine. What I'm trying to do is keep the office staffed.
I understand that. I was just trying to understand if it's tied to your salary and your salary is tied to something else, just trying to understand that mechanism and how that would operate.
And so basically the increase that is assessed by the salary commission at that level, the county pays half for mine. And so that's how it's adjusted.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes, Eric, have those unused funds from 24 already been
well, I would say, there was an estimate of how much budget would be underspent in 2024. So the answer to your question is yes, there's an estimate of what that would be, and that is based into your year-end fund balance.
That we've already moved into 25?
That you have based your 2025 starting fund balance would be. Now, have you spent all of that in 2025? No, you've not spent all of that in 2025. So, it would just reduce your starting fund balance for 2025.
Yeah, so it won't.
And I don't know how much that actually is in underspent dollars. I'm not sure I've seen that amount, but so
It wouldn't affect our 2025 budget then.
It would not affect your spending for 2025 budget. It just starts your starting fund balance.
And then I just got to ask Mr. Stan a question. Would you join your associates in your office with that benefit denial for when you come up for election again? Will you turn back your benefits that you're receiving in cash in lieu of?
For the next election?
Yes.
I think that was already discussed by the board, is that would take effect already. So I don't want to offer something that hasn't already been contemplated. My understanding is that for the 2026 or for the next election cycle, it reassesses our benefits. So I concur with that. That's what the board already discussed. So I was under that impression. So I didn't want you to think.
Oh,
I didn't want you to think I'm offering something new, because it was my understanding that that was already discussed.
I just want to make sure you're on board with it, because it would be a reduction in pay for you.
I understand.
And I think it's only fair that all of us participate in this equally, and that would really help out the county financially.
Yeah, and it was my understanding that was already triggered to take effect. So I just wanted to make it clear that by me agreeing to that, that's not looking at something that wasn't already contemplated, but giving you my affirmation.
Do you know what the fiscal impact that this would be for 2026? Or have you projected that yet?
Well, it's hard because we'd have to look at where we are for 2025, because again, for unfilled positions. So the jumper increase, it's going to be it'll be approximately an equivalent of an FTE. It'd be about 110 or so increase in 26. The thing that I think further complicates it, as the county is also discussing the COLAs and everything else, so this would be in lieu of the 3%. So this isn't like an additional amount, and that was similar to what we did back the previous year when we did that. So the 3% would not be added into this. So by 10%, you're basically, let's just say, if the county adopted a 3% for everybody else, which would include deputies in my office, really what we're looking for is a 7% increase on top of that. And so when you say looking at the budget increase for 26, I would have to take into account what would be the COLA that would be attributed for 2025 and really figure out the net change there. But
Thank you for that. It would be my opinion that I think that if you were to work with Eric and try to put together something that we can understand and get it to as quick as we can for consideration, and next week's our last meeting.
I recognize the time crunch, so.
I might also note, we may have some additional ARPA dollars that we have a final allocation plan for as well coming up for 2020, that you have to obligate by the end of this year. And so I think we'll be doing that next week as well. So there could be some funds that you might look at applying as a strategy as well.
I concur. I concur with Commissioner Bauman. Let's get it on the agenda for next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would you be willing to have a short recess? I need to use the restroom.
Sure. At this point, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
We are live?
We will reconvene the meeting We will reconvene the meeting from our 5-minute break, and we will move on to Commissioner Administrator updates.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
would you be willing to have us reconsider item number 8 of the regular business items?
Resolution 2024-0304, agreement with the City of Richland on behalf of Benton County Emergency Services. You would like to bring that back up for discussion?
If the chair is willing.
I would be willing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having dug into this very deep and thought about it very long and hard, believe that this is very necessary for our county. I don't like where we're at, but I don't get to change yesterday and how we got here, and I think this is necessary, and public safety is our number one responsibility, and I believe we need to address this, and we need to address it today, and that we need to pass this as a board, because we ask our first responders to be there and be ready to serve us, and it's our responsibility to give them the tools to do so. I recognize that there's questions here that we can't answer today, as far as some of the funding is concerned and so forth, but I think it's necessary that we address it and that we pass this for the service of the safety of our community. And so, Mr. Chairman, I would like to bring back and move to approve Resolution 2024-0304 as presented.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second with discussion.
Discussion.
What is alarming to me and which is out of our control is the uncertainty of the amounts that we're going to be spending. But the certainty that we do have in this agreement with being passed today is that while we're agreeing to join the 5 members of this board, being one of the 5, and therefore we're not obligated to anything beyond this. But it is a start, hopefully, for more clarity on what it's going to cost.
Any further discussion?
I would just say thank you to Commissioner Didier for sharing that, and I'm ready to vote.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Commissioner Administrator updates. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. A couple of items related to personnel elements. Our OPD director is here, interim director is here. Josh, you want to stand up really quickly? I just want to thank Josh for filling in during a period of time. He has done a really remarkable job, both on the, not just what he does in the courtroom, but certainly in the administrative realm. So wish Josh the very best as you move forward, and thank you for your service to Franklin County. Really appreciate it. Josh has worked with me in finding an interim replacement, and so we have that contract was executed in your earlier action. So payment will be starting here soon to take over that interim role. We have also started work on the position description. Josh has been working with Margot on the position description, so we'll start the recruitment for a permanent director for OPD as well. So there you have that. On the planning director front, we have interviews next Thursday. You have all been invited to participate in those interviews one-on-one as well with the candidates. So appreciate the work that folks have done to get that going. We do have 2 vacancies within our planning department as well. So working with Craig, Craig's still here. I'm not working with Craig. Craig's doing it all. But we are, working to interim solutions as we initiate the recruitment for those 2 planning positions as well. And we will be bringing an agreement in front of you for the recruitment for the firm to recruit for a county administrator, and I think that will be next week as well. So that'll be for the firm that will do the recruitment. So, and then let's see. I've been working with Benton County and Superior Court on an agreement with the juvenile justice program, and that is to, as we've talked about this before, which is to bring the detention center under the direct supervision then of the Benton and Franklin County Board of County Commissioners. The delegated authority for staffing it is under a bi-county agreement, and it will have the Benton County as the direct supervisor of it, but it ultimately will be the responsibility of the 2 boards, and that is an agreement that Superior Court will delegate that authority to the 2 boards. A lot of work in HAPO continues. Next week we will have an agreement with you to extend the interlocal agreement with Pasco for, I think we're going to do 5 months. I think it will be through the end of May. And that will give us the opportunity to, again, finalize the discussions on kind of the future, interlocal. What does it look like? We will have the master plan that will hopefully be done, and we'll be able to identify, will there be separation of activities? Will it be all under one management? How might it look like? So it'll be a management agreement in addition to maybe just an interlocal agreement as well going forward. I think in the interest of time, I think those are the highlights for the things that I certainly have been working on. We will be bringing you kind of your final ARPA allocation next week. If you recall, you have to obligate, your final obligation is by the end of 2024, and final expenditures will be by 2026. So we'll have a report for you to illustrate where we're at in all of those allocations as well. So we've got that in front of you next week as well.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Baumann.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had the opportunity to go in and visit a young man named Seth in the jail system here last week, and just wanted to say thank you to the sheriff and Commander Harmon that runs the jail, and thank you for running a jail that is running well and working well. I visited with that young man about it, and he has had this isn't the first place that he's spent some time, and he said that people have been extremely courteous and thoughtful and helpful during his time there, and so just wanted to say thank you for that. Last week had a SAT meeting, strategic advisory team that represents for CCOM, and so appreciate all the expertise that I continue to be able to learn there. Really enjoyed being invited to the groundbreaking ceremony for the Benton Franklin Juvenile Justice Center, and appreciate all of the judges and the staff that was there, and the organizations that have come around to make that successful. There was just a lot of the people that used that facility on behalf of our community to put tools in the hands of those that have unique challenges. And so I'm thankful for the accountability that we have and for the ability to have that accountability. So thank you to our partners across the river, Benton County, for the relationship we have and the partnership for operating the Juvenile Justice Center. Had a meeting with Building and Planning and a business that is would like to do business in Franklin County. So appreciated the Building and Planning hosting that. And Josh, thank you for your service to Franklin County. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Didier.
Yeah, last week was a pretty light week for as far as meetings, but the one meeting that I did attend that it really struck me as people that are concerned are the Columbia Snake River irrigators. and the potential removal of the Snake River dams. And it was brought up that everybody thought there would be a sigh of relief since President Trump was elected, but the concern was that we won't get any help from the Trump organization because Mr. Newhouse won re-election, and therefore there will be no help coming to Washington State. And I disagreed with him, and I proposed that they reach out to our new elected congressman from the 5th, because he has 3 of the dams in his district, and Newhouse only has 1. And Mr. Baumgartner hasn't dissed the president yet, and maybe he can make an alliance with him to come out and view these dams and see the importance to this region, because we have got to get this threat off our back. These farmers depend on the pools behind those dams to irrigate. The question was posed in the other meeting, the Columbia River Policy Advisory Group, as the detrimental effect on the salmon in the rivers in Oregon where the dams were breached. And it was brought forth with the information after I asked the question that the silt and the algae that was going down the river has created diseases in the fish, and they are dying. We knew this was going to happen. Fish can't swim and exist in polluted water. So I'm hoping that they will reach out, and they said they would. They said that was a good idea, get a hold of Mr. Baumgartner and talk with him. The other thing was, again, I'm going to bring up the unconstitutional pay. This is a constitutional question. I don't think we even need the AG's opinion, and I would like to see us pursue this, because we're still trying to get ourselves out of this predicament that has cost the county millions of dollars every year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So last week, or actually this week, Board of Health Finance Committee meeting. Last week was long-term aging and care. And I just want to comment on Commissioner Didier's update, the pulling out the dams. We're already struggling for enough electricity to bring businesses here to this area. We have actually turned down businesses because we simply do not have the power requirements that they are needing, and to pull the dams is, in my opinion, is ludicrous. Anyways, that is my report. We'll move on now to public comment. Is there anyone in the room for public comment?
Hello, people. With respect to your comment about energy, you could possibly reach out to the Department of Energy. I was recently reading a publication that their nuclear reactor could possibly power up to 1 million homes in the area, so that could be beneficial. The reason I'm here today is I wanted to read a letter into the record with respect to all of you commissioners. Dear members of the board, I'm writing to express my deep concern regarding recent actions and behaviors and exhibits by members of this board, particularly in relation to the fulfillment and duty of elected public officials and the treatment of constituents. As public officials, county commissioners bear a solemn duty to serve the people of Franklin County faithfully, completely, and without prejudice. Under the laws of the state of Washington, public office is a position of trust that carries with a significant responsibility. The Washington State Constitution and Revised Code of Washington State lays out clearly expectations for public servants in this capacity. Public officials must fulfill their office in a manner that upholds public integrity, justice, and public trust. The citizens of Franklin County have the right to expect that the commissioners will serve with transparency, accountability, and in accordance with the letter and spirit of the law. Failure to fulfill office and breach of public trust. The failure to fulfill the duty of the county commissioner is a violation of public trust and undermines the very principles upon which this office is built. When the commissioner neglects their responsibilities, fails to act competently, or act in a manner that is contrary to the interest of their constituents, it can result in harmful consequences for the community. Under RCW 42.2.010, public officials who neglect to fail to perform their duties may face serious repercussions, including impeachment and removal from office. The grand jury clause for corrupt public officials. In cases of corruption or misconduct, the grand jury under the Washington State Constitution provides an important mechanism for holding public officials accountable. Specifically, Article 1, Section 22 of the Washington State Constitution grants the right to a grand jury in criminal cases, and RCW 10.27.01 empowers a grand jury to investigate public corruption, including acts of bribery, misappropriation of public funds, and abuse of office by elected officials. Can I please get an extension to finish?
It's a 3-minute limit we created for everyone, so.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the room for public comment?
Commissioners, Michael Namchek, Assistant Director of Information Services, former telecommunications engineer. I thank you very much for reconsidering the resolution today. I appreciate that you passed it. I do believe that it is in the best interest of the county. I understand the hardships that you're having with the financial side of the house. I've been doing this here for this region for over 30 years. And that's the closest to a heart attack I've ever had. Thank you. But I will do everything and continue to do everything in my power to make sure that I am meeting the obligations from you and from the citizens of this county. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Michelle Andrews, I'm also grateful that you reconsidered. I do acknowledge it is a hardship, but there are lives that count on your decision today. And I am the wife of a paramedic firefighter, and they work hand in hand with law enforcement all the time. We need this coverage. I would like to go back to the Transit Committee, and even though they voted not to reconsider giving back 0.1% until 2026. They did get their gas tax. I don't like how they got it. The initiatives were pretty well hammered by our new governor and the language, but that is the same taxing district. We have more than adequate public transportation. We have a brand new fancy building just for them to meet at when they could do it over at the Benton County Administration Building. And we taxpayers in all these cities and these counties in the Big Five have been paying for that. And Franklin County and all these other cities have also been accruing debt. I think they'd like some money back. And so I will go back to the transit meeting. I expect that our representatives from this county will talk ahead of time to their counterparts and reconsider awarding back 0.1% so that we can pay this debt off quickly. It's not going to hinder the public transportation system. And one more note on energy, and I have had discussions with Daryl Olson. We're fairly good friends after 7 years of fighting for these dams. The problems are in the Idaho waters. I'm not going to go into that now. But there is also, from Y2K, they built a gas turbine system, and those turbines have broke down. But the infrastructure is all in place. You could immediately write contracts for new business to come in here. The nuclear stuff is new and it's taking more time to put in, but you would be more robust to have both. And you can build gas turbines until 2045. And county commissioners, if you do not have NEPA training, whenever an EIS comes up, that is your opportunity to leverage an EIS that is not done properly. And Daryl Olson has carried the water for multiple counties on that issue. It is within your power, and I encourage you to talk to a commissioner in Whitman County about what the NEPA requirements are and how to exercise them, because the state's not going to tell you. They don't want you to have that information. And I encourage you to do that. It will give you strength and put our voice forward when an EIS is not done correctly, and they most often aren't. Thank you.
Jay Atwood, Benton County Emergency Services Director. I too want to echo Michael's sentiment and thank the commission for reconsidering and passing this. I understand the hardship, and to Commissioner Didier's point, I just wanted to, I took a moment just to look at some numbers really quickly to kind of allay some of the fears, I think, when we're talking about these big numbers. Right now in the current budget for the budget coming up for 2025, Franklin County's burden is $650,000. 1.2 is Pasco's burden. So in total, it's about $2 million for Franklin County if you look at the conglomerate. I don't anticipate, as we move down this path toward an independent organization, our main objective is to not increase costs significantly for any of our users. So that's going to be at the forefront. And I think I would offer myself to the commissioner at any point that you want to have a conversation and go through some of this some more. I will say as well that other options, we did our due diligence. I can tell you between my experience over time and the lengths that we went through to get to where we are today with this project, I don't think that we could do any better as a region. I really don't. I know it's expensive, but I can guarantee anything short of doing this as a region would cost the citizens of Franklin County a lot more money to build a standalone system. That's really all I have to say. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Patrick Gedner, a resident of Franklin County for over 25 years. I know a lot of you. I'm here to thank you for your service. I was not prepared to come to this meeting. I just happened to be paying my auto license over here and saw that the meeting was open. It's been a while since I've been here. But the first thing that impressed me, I saw all the commissioners in coat and tie. That's class. That shows me that you have a deep respect for your responsibility in office, and I thank you for that. But I want to thank all the elected officials, all the approved officials, and all the employees of this county for the work that they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room for public comment?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd just like to say, if you would like to go to the Ben Franklin Transit meeting, it is tomorrow night, starts at 6 o'clock. And we don't meet in that new building. We're meeting in the old building. The new building was for all the employees. Secondly, Mike, you guys, I want to thank you. This uncertainty of numbers is not your fault. You're working with a big corporate Motorola organization, and you're not getting hardcore numbers, and I understand that. But as a businessman, I don't go into a deal unless I know where I stand. And I feel like we don't know where we stand yet, and that bothers me. And that's where the uncertainty, where everybody thinks that the taxpayers' money is endless and you can just go back to the well. No, these people are hurting. And thirdly, Josh, I want to thank you for your service to our county. You're going to be missed.
I would concur, Josh. I hate to see you leave, and I wish you all the best. So don't be a stranger. All right. Is there any need for executive session today?
There is no need for an executive session today.
Any other business for the good of the county?
Mr. Chairman, can we do our closed session? Oh, no, it has to be at 2 because of, yeah, okay.
I'd be more than happy to give you a primer if that's what you're looking for.
So no more business for the good of the county. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Workshop?
Workshop. How do you say go?
Well, that's right. We have a workshop.
All right. So
Got to call it to order.
Wednesday, December 11th, 2024. The time is 12:17. I will call to order the business workshop and call the meeting to order.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve workshop agenda for discussion of the boards and committees for the board's assignments for 2025.
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. Commissioner assignments.
Retired commissioner.
Yeah, so Teresa, I think, has a handout for you, just to kind of help facilitate the discussion. This could be really short, this could be really long discussion.
Gonna be really short.
If, you know, what we're simply wanting to do is get feedback on any interest in moving, changing, et cetera, so that we can prepare for the first meeting of January, where you will not only select your structure for chair, vice chair of the Board of Franklin County Commissioners, but whether or not you want to see anything. And if there's anything missing that we're not accurately capturing as well, that you think should be one, please make sure we do that as well. So if there's any, boards that you know for sure that you want to see if you can trade with someone, or if someone wants to say, I'd be interested in this if you're not, I think that's probably a great way to kind of just have that opening discussion. As well as the fact if there's more than, you're also on one of these, but it's not listed, or a member and you attend, let us know so we can make sure we accurately correct that too.
The Benton Franklin Board of Health, I believe there's only 2 seats there.
Yes, I was going to make that correction. I already wrote it down. There's only 2 seats there, and we have 4 members from the public also on the board.
Okay, and so which 2 or who's currently serving on it?
Myself and Commissioner Didier.
Yes.
And you want to keep that way?
I would like to stay.
Yes. And I have my dates and everything configured with the appointments that I have, and to change would only upset the cart, make it more difficult for me to remember meetings. I would just as soon stay with the ones I have.
I was gonna add like 4 BF COG that I'm assigned to, because you already said on that board.
Which one?
BF COG. Benton Franklin Council of Governments. You already
Like to be on that board?
No, you already sit on it.
Yeah.
But I've got like 4 additional boards. I've never got an invite to any of them, and so you already sit and know the people. I don't know.
So are they subcommittees of COG? Are they?
Yeah.
Credit Committee, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, CEDS Committee, Revolving Loan Fund, the Loan Advisory Committee, and the Urban Surface Transportation Program Steering Committee.
Yes. Now, I got a call from the commissioner from Benton County, and he was wanting to know if to serve on one of those. I said, you go ahead and serve on it. That's fine with me.
I'm fine with the assignments that I have. I don't have any.
Would you like to serve on the Ben Franklin Council of Governments?
Give me a snapshot. Is it once a month or
Yes,
quarterly?
once a month, and you're dealing with all the leaders of the Tri-Cities as far as infrastructure for roads. We're in the process of talking about trying to get another crossing from Self Landing over to Horn Rapids.
So I got a wild idea. It's going to make it way simpler for everybody. We're going to get Elon Musk out here. We're going to put a tunnel instead of a bridge. Environmental impact.
He's busy enough now with what he's doing. He's putting a tunnel somewhere else.
That's fine. He's got a bunch of those machines. He says he has the technology to bore 7 miles a day.
I'd only
Way I
take
see
one
it,
day out
it's,
here.
It's a 2-day job.
Yeah, set up and go.
Yeah. Imagine the environmental impact.
You've got an inside line. You get a hold of him, will you?
I'm thinking so. I'd be happy to sit on the COG board, but if you're happy with it, that's fine too. I agree that we need to try to do a north of Pasco crossing somehow.
What is the environmental impact statement on a tunnel?
Way different. They're
Met him, but my cousin engineered the tunnel that goes under San Francisco Bay. He did it about 60 years ago, I think.
Musk is practicing at his cost underneath some of his things, and that one that they just did down there at that Giga thing, it's pretty impressive.
I'll tell you what was impressive about Musk's achievements is bringing the rocket back down and landing it on the pad. That was incredible.
Did you see him catch that sucker with the chopsticks?
Yes.
That's amazing.
I never saw NASA do that.
That's the largest man-made structure that has ever flown. It's 300 foot, 200 tons.
Yeah.
Caught it with a set of chopsticks. Wow.
Yeah, I'm good just keeping it the way it is if everybody else is.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm good with that.
Keep it simple.
My only request is that we would maybe have a reaccounting with everybody and ask them to, send us calendar invites and those kind of things. That would be helpful, but I'm okay with where.
Tracy, do you know, this may be before your time, but do we communicate to each one of these groups then formally that these are our designees?
In some of the groups, I don't know the contact names.
Okay.
And then, like, for example, the previous week, Mr. Didier gave me the contact in one of those boards because the invites were sent out through email, but not through the Outlook.
Mhm.
Email, which makes,
Bless you.
Bless you.
Yeah.
Which makes it hard for the calendar to keep up,
Right.
but.
Yeah, so I have 3 here that I haven't been getting invites to. I guess the Fair Housing Authority I have. And then I got a question for Mr. Johnson. And that is, since we're extending this Pasco agreement for 5 months, are you going to be here at the end of that to make sure that everything gets done right?
Not leaving.
We're going to do an extension. We're going to do an extension.
Are you negotiating for me or them?
Who wants to pay more at this point?
I think that it's only appropriate that if you do an extension for 5 months, you got to be here to make sure that everything's fulfilled the way.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I can edit that. I can edit that agreement to February 28th right now. It's actually,
I like the 5 months. I think it's perfect, but we need you here to make sure everything's done right.
But we'll talk about that.
All right.
Yep.
Good.
Is there anyone in the room for public comment that relates to the board positions? And only to the board positions.
Hello, people again.
Hello.
Where are these boards and quasi boards and where are all these meetings published to where members of the public can go to them, be a part of them if they wish?
I believe you got to go to the label like Ben Franklin Transit. You have to go to their
virtually
website.
all of these are independent entities. So, for example, if you wanted to see the Franklin Board of Health, you would need to go to the Benton County Board of Health website, and they will do their own public notices, their own public elements. And so the law itself oftentimes will state, are we appointing 1 member, 2 members, and those are the situations that what we're going to be doing is pointing our members to independent release organizations. So same thing with, for example, I suspect there's a Clean Air Authority here, on here, or
Well, with respect to the Board of Governors for Government Administration, what was the acronym that you called? What was the name of that board that you two sit
Ben
on?
Franklin Council of Governments.
Okay.
the COG.
With
Similarly.
respect to that, how do I look into that? Where do I?
It meets over in Richland.
Okay.
But I attend virtually most all the time because it's such a long ways, and with the traffic the way it was, to try to manage this traffic and get there on time, it's tough, so I attend virtually.
So if you
do
go
that.
to the Benton Franklin, bfcog.us, which is the Benton Franklin Council of Government, all of their meeting information is online.
Perfect.
Your assignments are listed on our county website, so that'll give you a.
Yeah. And I
So
will,
under under committees, under the committees tab, I clicked on that and it was very vague. It didn't like have even a synopsis of even that board or.
they didn't have a list like this?
No, sir. And I have to be careful about how I speak because I understand that I made a misstatement, I guess, last week with relation to the law library and there being a law library in the jail, come to find out.
There is.
So I need to be careful in what everybody's telling me and how I'm relaying it because come to find out, I've been given misguided information from a lot of people. And with respect to you, Ms. Diller, I've been very vocal about the law library. Come to find out, this is a federal issue. This was before a federal court.
We have
Come
to
to
have
find out, you sit on the law library board. So when I sat up here last week and I made those statements and I shook your hand and you didn't even tell me that you were on those boards or anything, I had to sit and watch these meetings to find this out. And why? Why wouldn't you tell me that you were on that board?
Well, I guess I didn't think you needed to know, but we have a law library. It's in place. It's all computerized because we used to have it out at CBC. We had all those books. And when CBC asked us to leave, we don't have the room to store all those books. And you got to update those every year. The cost of that is exponential.
And we don't have the funding for that?
No.
What is the name of the board and where is it held and when's the next meeting?
The law library, I think we only meet 4 times a year. It's quarterly.
When's the next one? And where is it at?
I can find out.
Yeah, please.
Anyone else in the room for public comment?
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you. Any more business for the good of the county? Not this meeting, workshop is adjourned. Thank you.
Well, we got to wait around here for a couple hours and then we got another.